This Film is Lit, the podcast where we finally settle the score on one simple question. Is the book really better than the movie? I'm Brian, and I have a film degree, so I watch the movie, but don't read the book.
And I'm Katie. I have an English degree, so I do things the right way and read the book before we watch the movie.
So prepare to be wowed by our expertise and charm as we dissect all of your favorite film adaptations and decide if the silver screen or the written word did it better. So turn it up, settle in, and get ready for spoilers, because this film is lit. We return to the land of Fantasia as a new threat endangers the magical realm. It's the Neverending Story Part 2, the next chapter, and this film is lit. Hello and welcome back to This Film is Lit, the podcast where we talk about movies that are based on books. It is the second part of our spring mini-series, of a two-part spring mini-series. We're doing The Neverending Story. This is part 2. There is a part 3, but we will not be covering that because it is not based on a book.
Not that I know of.
Yeah, from everything, all the research we've done, not based on a book, just a bare cash grab, cashing in on the property. We are joined, as we were on the last episode, by April Etmanski.
That's okay.
I jumped into I said April Etmanski. I went to No Such Thing, and I combined it. Never mind. I'll start again there. We're joined once again, as we were on the last episode, by April Etmanski of the No Such Thing as a Bad Movie Pod. April, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's awesome to be here again. Happy to talk about part 2.
This is going to be fun. So we talked about on the last episode that this is the one that I watched a lot as a kid. So this is very nostalgic for me. Neither of you remembered anything about this movie. So you were going in cold, and I'm very interested to get your guys' feelings because mine is very colored by by my nostalgia. So I'll be interested to see what both of you thought of it, especially comparing it to the book, because I have a feeling there's going to be lots of changes. Before we get started, April, I mentioned No Such Thing as a Bad Movie Pod, but why don't you go ahead and tell people where they can find that lovely podcast?
Well, it's a bi-weekly podcast, and we're on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, basically where most podcasts can be found. And we talk about bad movies. We kind of analyze them, do a little bit of history, and talk about the things that we like about them. And we've done episodes on movies such as The Island of Dr. Moreau, Hudson Hawk, The Number 23, Torque, and a new discovery, Fight of Fury, starring Shuni B. Have you seen that one, Brian?
I have not. It doesn't ring a bell. Who is Shuni B?
Well, Fight of Fury is it's like a new movie, but it's like Miami Connection meets a Neil Breen level vanity project, but without the creepy politics. And it's available on Amazon Prime. Fight of Fury.
I'm intrigued.
You should check it out.
You're definitely going to check that out. So yes, No Such Thing as a Bad Movie Pod. Huge backlog of episodes. Very funny, very enjoyable. Highly recommend them. Go check them out. But now it's time. We have all of our segments. Let's get into our first one with Let Me Sum Up.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
So we actually need this segment.
Yes, they're very different this time.
Yeah, pretty different. So I'm going to go ahead and summarize the book, the second half of The Neverending Story, because the first movie follows almost exactly the first half of the book. So the second half of the book, The Neverending Story, follows Bastian after he initially comes to Fantasia right after renaming the childlike empress. She gives him Auron, which grants Bastian's wishes. However, using Auron also takes away Bastian's memories. Bastian uses the gem to build himself up into an impressive warrior, worlds away from the scared little boy he actually was. In the process, he loses more and more of himself, falling away from his friends Atreyu and Falcor, and under the influence of the wicked sorceress, was it Zaida?
In the movie, they say Zaida.
Zaida?
But yeah.
The wicked sorceress Zaida. Bastion eventually tries to usurp the throne of Fantasia, and in the process realizes that he was only a few wishes away from being trapped forever in Fantasia as a memoryless husk. In order to get back to his own world, Bastion must let go of the facade that he's built and re-find who he truly is.
I wish we had gotten that plot. That sounds way more interesting. So, for the movie, here's what we got going on. It's not. There's some similarities here. Bastion bucks after failing to make the swimming team and a further falling out with his father, who has begun dating again. Once again finds the Neverending Story and ventures back into the land of Fantasia, this time bearing Auron, the medallion from the cover of the book, which we can find out can grant wishes. Upon arriving, he learns that things are not going great. A new threat endangers the inhabitants of Fantasia. Zaida, an evil witch queen lady, in the movie I feel like it's not super clear, but we'll get to it, I guess, has captured the childlike empress, and a new mystical force is also spreading through Fantasia, leaving things empty. Bastion, with the help of Atreyu, must find Zaida and force her to set the childlike empress free, thus somehow stopping the magical force that is consuming Fantasia. I'm not exactly clear on why that's connected, but sure. The monkey wrench in the plan. Every time Bastion uses Auron to make a wish to aid his quest, one of his memories is stolen by Zaida or by Auron. It's kind of vague in the movie as well. Mm-hmm. She has them. I don't think she's stealing. We'll talk about it, I guess. If he uses all of his memories as wishes, he will forget who he is and thus be trapped in Fantasia forever. Zaida will have won and rule over Fantasia, I think is her plan. Long story shortish, Bastion, after a brief heel turn where he murders Atreyu, confronts Zaida, wishes for her to have a heart, which seems to destroy her for some reason, and that frees the childlike empress for some reason, and that saves Fantasia from the emptiness which was consuming it, which is the new evil force. Bastion then returns home to Earth, reunites with his father, and they hug and make up. The end. That seems like mostly the movie, right?
This is pretty much it.
Cool. So if you haven't seen the movie or read the book, you've got a little bit of a brief understanding of what's going on in them. We have one Guess Who this week, so let's go ahead and do it.
Who are you?
No one of consequence.
I must know.
Get used to disappointment.
Okay.
She was wearing a long gown of violet silk, and her flaming red hair was coiled and braided into a fantastic edifice. Her face and her long, thin hands were pale as marble. There was something strangely disturbing about her eyes. They were different colors, one green, one red.
So I think this one's going to be easy because there's only one new character, like really. Well, that's not true. There are other new characters in the movie, but based on the description, this can only be Zaida, however you want to pronounce it.
I guess it is
Yes.
Zaida. I was just kind of saying Zadie when I was reading the book, like in my head, but
Yeah.
I was just
I'm
saying
totally fine with.
like Zaid, not Zaida.
Oh, yeah, Zaid.
But
There
I
you
mean,
go. That would work, too.
Who's to say, right?
Who knows?
I'm
yeah.
totally fine with using the movie
I'm gonna go with the
pronunciation
movie one,
since that's the only one we really have.
Yeah.
But it is Zaida.
I'm a little disappointed she didn't, and I don't think she did unless I missed it. She doesn't have two different color eyes.
I
the
didn't
movie.
notice
No, I
that.
don't think so.
I think that would have been like an easy. They had colored contacts in 1990. They could have like, why did they just give her one green contact? That would have been cool. I don't know. That seems like weird. But yeah, she doesn't have red hair either. She has like dark hair.
Yeah, it's like dark brown. There were a lot more character descriptions in the second half of the book, but literally none of those characters made it into the movie.
Yeah, and there's
movie.
other new characters in the movie that aren't in the book, so can't use those either.
Yeah. Well, that one was pretty simple. I will say this: her character is one of my favorite things about the movie. We'll get into it. So I'm glad she was in the book. All right, let's find out what else was in the book.
Nicholas Flamel is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone.
What?
Honestly, don't you two read?
So we open up and we start with Bastion's reintroduction. And as we mentioned in the prequel episode, everybody's been recast except for the bookstore owner because this movie was filmed 6 years after the initial film. So all the original actors were far too old to reprise their roles. So we open up with the new Bastion. We're reintroduced to him. And all of a sudden in the opening scene, he's like rushing around the kitchen as his dad's coming home, and he's like knocking things all over the place. And he seems to be clumsy, which was not a character trait that I recall from the first movie. and is also interesting because I realized after I wrote this note, coming back to it, it doesn't play into the story at all, as far as I'm aware, and from the rest of the film.
Just for that opening bit.
It's just the opening bit, but they never, ever, for the rest of the film, do they ever have a moment where he's like clumsy and it causes a problem. But is that clumsiness a character trait from the book?
I don't recall it ever being mentioned in the book. Like specifically that he's clumsy.
Yeah.
He's chubby and not athletic in the book, and those things are harped on quite a bit, so I guess it's not a stretch.
I guess it could be the
clumsy.
movies because he's not overweight in the movie.
Right.
Maybe they were like, well, we'll make him clumsy, like as his physical, thing he has to overcome.
I think they just wanted to give him a little more of a character trait.
Yeah, like I said, the thing that was really weird to me is that it never comes back. Not once. You have a whole scene where he's climbing like dangerous stairs on the side of the, those like handholds on the side of the castle at the end or in the middle of the movie. And you would think like his clumsiness would play a role there. Doesn't seem to. I don't know. This is weird to me. It's interesting. Speaking of sort of new character traits, he's trying out for the swim team in the movie. And he has to go on the high dive, and we find out he is deathly afraid of heights, and he can't do the high dive, and so he doesn't make the swim team because he's too scared to do the high dive. And this is it agoraphobia? Is that the fear of heights?
I think agoraphobia is
people.
I think that's going outside.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not
Well,
sure what it is.
I don't know what it is either. Well, whatever. His fear of heights, is that a character trait of Bastian from the book?
No, he's never on any swim team in the book. The only kind of sports thing that's mentioned is having to climb the rope in gym class. And that was in the first half of the book, and he can't do it, and everyone's making fun of him, including the teachers, and it's a point of contention for him.
So there is some inspiration for like being humiliated in like a gym class setting, but it's not like in that instance, it sounds like it's just he can't physically do it versus like has some sort of
scared,
fear or something.
I will say that like the only thing that came back to me from ever seeing this movie was that scene at the beginning where he can't jump off the high dive board.
Oh, yeah.
Because I have seen this before, but like that's the only thing I remembered. And like I used to swim as a kid in like the local like rec center, and there was this huge diving board, and it scared the hell out of me. And I was like, I could never ever go up there. It seemed so tall. I don't know how tall it really was, but it was probably just like the one in the movie.
Yeah. I remember doing, because I used to swim quite a bit as a kid. I did the middle dive. I don't know if I ever went to a pool that had like the super high dive like that. I think we had one like, because there's like that middle one on the one he's at in the movie, and I think we had one that was about that height, and I remember going off that one. But yeah, I can't imagine going off one at his age that's like 30.
Is that a thing to be on like a middle school swim team?
I wouldn't think at that age they would do
high dive.
I mean, there's diving in high school,
right? But isn't
well, like
I don't know.
The one at my rec center, kids that young were jumping off it, but like as a competition for like a sports team, I don't think so.
It seems unlikely. It also is weird because, and maybe I could be wrong. I was never on the swim team, and I have some friends who were. So there's a chance that like in high school or in a younger, because obviously once you get older, if you're on the swim team, there are people who swim and there are divers. You don't both.
That was the thing that was odd to me, was that I was thinking of it more in terms of like, okay, like you can be on the track team, but not everybody on the track team does the high jump.
Yeah. Like some of them are sprinters, some of them are distance runners. And the swimming would be the same way. But there's a chance that in high school with a small enough team that maybe they have to, like you have to be able to do everything at least to some extent. Like there may be kids who are better at swimming and kids who are better at diving, but I don't know. It's weird. I thought it was interesting. If you're on a swim team and at a young age, did you have to dive? Was that like required, or could you just swim? I don't know.
Or was the coach just mean? Because that might
maybe the coach
was just mean.
That could be it. Speaking of other new things, as we're introduced to Bastian in this film, he gets home after the swim meet, and his dad's there microwaving a pizza for him, which is very 80s or like early 90s lady. It's like microwaving a frozen pizza. Ugh, gross. Just they have an oven. Put it in the oven. What are you doing? And but Bastian is wearing an incredibly ratty sweater, and at first I was like, before the conversation about it, I was like, is that just like a fashion thing, or is he like
it's no longer a sweater, it's a vest now. It doesn't
it
even
has
have
that
sleeves are
true.
completely gone.
It has no arms and it has giant gaping holes through the middle of it. And it's like completely falling apart. And I was like, okay. But then they explained that his mom gave him this for Christmas and he's very attached to it because his mom passed away. Does he have sort of that keepsake sweater memento in the book?
No, I don't recall anything like that in the book.
Okay. Does he have anything of his mom's that he like holds on to and that you recall from the
I
book?
don't recall that they ever mention
Okay.
anything that he like hangs on to like that.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. It also is one of those things that doesn't ever really come back in any way. He doesn't like
we see the memory later
Yes,
of
we
her
see
giving
that
it to him,
at
but
Christmas.
it doesn't come back in like a meaningful
I was
way.
expecting like from my, and again, because I remembered so little about what actually happens in the film, I was kind of expecting there to be like a moment where he like gives it up or like, or like is able to like put it away or something as he like moves. I don't know. Yeah. Interesting. Does the childlike empress, who is now just the childlike empress again, I didn't have a question about this, but I do want to talk about it. Does the childlike empress call him back to Fantasia in the book? Because in the film he has left and now he has to return to Fantasia.
Right. Well, in the book, he's just still in Fantasia.
Right. That's kind of what I figured.
Yes, we don't have to reestablish anything with him in the real world. And it's neither here nor there because it's just different. But for starting where it does, I do think that the movie does a good job of setting up like who Bastian is and what his conflicts are and some reminders about how he can get to Fantasia.
Yeah, it does a pretty good job. So I don't have this question here, but since I mentioned the childlike empress, I have to ask it because I meant to ask this and I forgot. Is she from the rest of this point in the book to the end? Is she still called the childlike empress, or is she called Moonchild?
She's called Moonchild.
Okay.
And Katie, correct me if I'm wrong. She doesn't show up again in the second half of the book at all, right?
No, we don't see her at all.
You've read it
okay.
more. I've read it 2 weeks ago now, so there's some details I'm a little fuzzy on. She's talked about a lot, and she's a big part of the plot, but we never actually see her again.
But she is referred to as Moonchild.
I think they do occasionally call her the childlike empress still.
Okay.
They kind of use both, but like mostly Moonchild.
But in the movie, they never say Moonchild.
Right.
Not once in this movie. It's like
but
it never happened.
Yeah, the second half of the book, we literally never see her again.
Okay.
To go back to your previous point, Katie, about how the movie like sets up like who Bastian is and stuff, I thought that was really good too, because like there's people who either haven't seen the first movie or just need like a reminder of like what his deal is. But like the whole like scene where he goes into the bookstore, that's like exactly the same from the first movie. Like the little moment
like
where he
identical.
leaves and then he smiles, and it's like it's like literally the exact same scene.
They're like, what if we just do the same thing again?
They got the same
Just have
actor
the
back.
exact
I like
same
that.
Yeah, the only one who returned. Yeah. So speaking of new characters and old characters, but new characters, we have Nimbly, the bird creature, who, as soon as Bastian arrives in Fantasia, lands to kind of talk to Bastian and be like, "Oh, you can use Arn to make wishes," and he's working for Zaidi. He's working for Zaida as like her hench bird, and he's like trying to convince Bastian to make wishes so that he'll lose his memory or whatever for the evil Zaida lady. And I want to know if bird character with human eyeballs is from the book.
No, that character is not in the book
At all.
at all.
No flying
disappointing.
birds, no big birds.
0 bird characters.
I did love any moment in the film where they had like clear cable shots where they like pulled the whole actor in a bird suit just like up and away as he flew away. It was super cool. I actually kind of think his character design was kind of interesting. The human eyeballs are a little disconcerting. Like at times the way, I don't know, something about the way he looks, but they did a pretty good job disguising his face. I felt like
I thought
and he
his
looks like a
costume was
bird.
pretty solid. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Overall,
agree.
I like it. Speaking of Zaida, when we were first introduced to her in the movie, Nimbly walks up to her and she's like in her chamber and she has to magically apply her face. Literally, she has like a blank slate of a face, like it looks like blurred out, but it's like a blank face, and she uses some magic potion juice and magic's on her face. Is that something she has to do in the book or does in the book? Because I thought that was creepy and interesting.
No, I don't think so. Which seems like a really strange thing to add. I mean, pretty cool, but no, I don't remember that in the book.
My guess is they wanted to just give her as much of a sort of ominous introduction as possible.
Evil.
Yeah, something creepy. Yeah. It also reminded me of, I don't know if either of you have ever seen the traumatizing classic Return to Oz.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I was just
it made me
that.
think of the princess who can switch her heads out.
Oh,
that's very like felt like reminiscent of that scene.
Yeah, it also, I think there's a little sort of meta joke in there about like a woman putting her face on. Obvious, like that. I feel like that's there and that sort of thing. It also kind of reminds me of the scene, when like when you first see Darth Vader and I don't know if it's the first time you see him, but one of the first times, at least in one of the movies, where he's getting his helmet on and you see him from behind and like you see his white head and then it's like, and it locks his helmet on and then he turns around and we're able to see him. I don't know. There's like that element of like mystery and intrigue to this character that you don't know much about. I thought it was interesting. The effect looks okay. Like it would have been creepier if they hadn't done it digitally. Like if they had done like a prosthetic and found a way to hide the cut, like if her non-face was a prosthetic as opposed to like it's just kind of like a blurred out.
Yeah,
face.
It's like they digitally like colored over her face instead of putting her in like a smooth prosthetic. That would have been creepy.
Yeah, that would have been super creepy if it was like a smooth prosthetic and they just hid the cut somehow. Would have been really cool, but it's still kind of creepy. So I know this now because it was in the Let Me Sum Up, but does Bastian get Arin and is he able to make wishes upon it? Because I don't recall that being an element at all in the first one. I mean, they don't have Arin, or maybe it was an element. Does he wish on it at one point in the first one? I can't remember.
Atreyu?
Oh, does Atreyu?
Atreyu has it.
Atreyu has it. Does he ever wish on it in the first
No,
one?
It just kind of guides him. Sometimes he might be like, show me the way, kind of, but he doesn't make wishes. That's for Bastian.
Gotcha. So Bastian makes wishes in this one, and so I want to know if the wishes is the thing, and also does it then steal his memories? And again, spoilers from the Let Me Sum Up. The answer is yes, but go ahead.
Right. So he does make wishes on Arin. Arin like grants his every desire, basically, and he does lose memories.
Okay.
Doing it, which in the book, the loss of memory is a consequence of using Arin. Like it's like a pay the toll man kind of a thing. Yeah. And I'm not sure in the movie because I felt like at the beginning they set up that Zaida
is somehow
doing it. Where she's got her
because she has that
memory machine device thing,
a really cool looking thing that's like a head in a glass ball with liquid that drains and then turns into little crystal balls that roll down and fall into the bottom, and those are the memories. It's really cool, but it does imply that she's somehow doing this,
right? But then later on, Atreyu and Falkor are talking. And Atreyu says that Arin takes his memories away because he's human, and that's just how it works, which is what the case is in the book,
right?
So I feel like the movie was kind of selling us both things here.
A little bit,
and that just made it confusing.
It did make it a little confusing because, it does seem like she's doing it maybe. I don't know.
And she's like tricking him into wishing, basically.
Yeah. She's trying to get... thing. Yeah, she's trying to use people to make him use his wishes because he has like a set number. He's got like 300 wishes or whatever, and then he loses all of his memories. I will say that I just love that device so much that I'm okay with that change, even though it makes it a little confusing. That thing is so cool looking. It's awesome. So this is one of my favorite things in the movie that I remembered as a kid very vividly from when I watched this movie a bunch is Zaida's giants, the monsters that come out of the ground and chase Bastian around. And they first show up in the Silver City and they kind of break through the ground and terrorize the citizens of Silver City. And they look in the movie, they look kind of like lobster. I don't even know. They kind of look like shellfish of some sort or something.
Yeah, they have like, a shellfishy look.
And they're super cool, I think. They have moments that they don't look as good, but some of the close-ups and stuff are really cool. And I like their weird weapons. Anything about those creatures from the book.
Well, Zaida does control giant empty suits of armor in the book, so it's pretty close. They are not mentioned to look like lobsters.
Okay.
Their faces kind of looked like they reminded me of bats.
Yeah, they do have
but
kind of
not the
bat-like
cute
faces.
bats, the scary
No.
bats. But I thought they were creepy looking in the movie.
Yeah.
I would have been freaked out by that as a little kid.
I remember thinking they were creepy as a kid, but also thinking they were cool. And there's moments where they look really good, but there's other moments, like especially later when they're like tipping them over, that they kind of
just
they
fall
look so
over.
Yeah, they're like super unwieldy and like they kind of like wobble around. Like,
they can't really move a lot because they're so lumbering kind of.
Yeah, and they have like those little pincer feet. They just kind of like yeah. But one of the things I thought was really funny in the movie that I forgot about is that moment where he's running from them in the Silver City when they first show up, and they're like he runs through like a tunnel and he's standing on that edge of the pool and it's trying to get into him. And we've seen these things walking so far, and they kind of like teeter-totter, like crab walk. And then all of a sudden, that one is trying to get to him, and it's like clearly on wheels ramming into the...
It's on wheels.
Like ramming. It's so weird. It's like, wait, they have wheels now? What is going on? So then he escapes the evil lobster's bats, the evil lobster bat suits of armor, and he falls down a tunnel beneath the Silver City and ends up in a room that I cannot recall the name of. It has a name.
It was like the room of secret plots or something like that.
Yes, that is what it was. And it's very strange. Instantly, there's a woman who's like in a fan, who has a fan underneath her, just blowing her garments all up in the air. There's a woman who is a harp playing herself and singing. Then there's a mud creature who's just like mud or something. And then there's like a mountainy lava-y thing. And it's all real trippy and weird. And they basically speak all in riddles. And then ultimately he gets the help me Obi-Wan Kenobi message from the childlike empress. And that's what spurs him on his journey. But that room is real weird. And I wanted to know if any of that was from the book.
That scene is not from the book.
At all?
No. None of those characters are in the book.
If it is something. I got a real weird vibe from that scene, like a weird kind of sexual vibe. I felt like he had fallen into a brothel.
Yeah.
That was underneath the city.
It's very strange. And then the creatures... it's one of those scenes that I forgot about until we were rewatching it, and then it had a very vivid memory, like came clicking back into place.
Yeah, I was the minute I saw it, I was just like, I don't know what this is, and like, and then they kind of give him his like mission, but that's not really from the book either. It was just completely fabricated.
And it's funny because they kind of give him his mission, but then ultimately the childlike empress like shows up as a hologram and also tells him what he needs to do. So it's like, what was the point of them? She could have just showed up and be like, find me, save me, Bash.
Yeah, it's just like put more weird things in here, I guess.
I guess.
Yeah. I do like the fan lady just shows up the rest of the film. Like every now and then, like whenever he's in the Silver City, she's just like in the background, like there. She's like, the only one of those characters too that shows up again.
She's like kind of a version of one of those things outside of like a car dealership.
Yeah.
She's kind of waving her arms
like that.
The wacky inflatable arm guy. Yeah. Yeah, I guess the other ones were too difficult to move around. Like, she was easy. They just move a fan underneath her and put her wherever. Like, the other one, like that mud creature, they're like, this is the only set that goes in. So after he needs to go on his mission, he realizes he needs to fly because it would take way too long to walk, I guess, to the castle where Zaida is. And so he needs to fly. And so he's going to use Arin to wish for a flying creature. And he wishes for a dragon, a giant evil dragon named Smurg. And it ends up like burning half the city down and wreaking havoc. And then there's a big fun chase scene because Falkor then just shows up. It's like, did you forget about Falkor? Like, why did you wish for this dragon when you know Falkor exists? And then they have to chase down the dragon, and it just gets fucking electric. It gets bug zappered by the castle and explodes. And I want to know if any of that with the dragon is in the book.
Okay, so this is something that I had in better in the book. That's where I would put this.
Okay.
So Smurg is in the book, but he's way weirder. I mean, the movie tried.
Yeah.
Like they gave it their best shot. And like you said, it doesn't make sense that he'd invent Smurg to fly to the hand-shaped castle. They would just take Falkor.
Yeah.
Like when that part of the movie was on and he was like, "Oh, we need a creature that flies." I thought that was just going to be Falkor's cue.
Yeah, like, all right,
he was going to like
too.
come on screen and be like, "I'm here."
Yeah.
But in the book, he invents Smurg because there's this other character who wants to be a hero, but there aren't any monsters for him to fight, which is a simplified version of what happens, but that's basically the gist of it. It's not super important. But I'm going to read you this description
Of Smurg.
Smurg because
It's pretty whack.
it's something. His wings are made of slimy skin, and their spread is 100 feet. When he isn't flying, he stands on his hind legs like a gigantic kangaroo. He has the body of a mangy rat and the tail of a scorpion with a sting at the end of it. He has the hind legs of a giant grasshopper. His forelegs, however, which look small and shriveled, resemble the hands of a small child. He can pull in his long neck as a snail does its feelers. There are 3 heads on it. One is large and looks like the head of a crocodile. From its mouth, he can spit icy fire. But where a crocodile has eyes, it has protuberances. These are extra heads. One resembles the head of an old man. With it, he can see and hear. But he talks with the second head, which has the wrinkled face of an old woman.
That is wild.
It sounds like something like a little kid would make up. They're like making it up as they go.
Yes, very much.
It also sounds a little biblical. Like at elements in the beginning of like just slamming together an animal, like Revelation style, like just slamming together animal body parts. I will say that the one in the movie does have those weird protuberant eye.
Yeah, it does have like eye stalks,
but they're just eyes, and it would be so weird and confusing if the movie never addressed it. But if at the end of those eye stalks was just an old man's head and an old lady's head, I'd be like, "What in the world is that?"
Yeah, and I didn't feel like that creature was one of the strongest creatures in the movie, like design and execution wise. But like, I love that how he created it, and then like it immediately goes bad and starts destroying the city. It's like, oh shit, and that kind of happens in the book. It's not like that, but it flies off and goes. It like Katie mentions, it captures a princess so that the hero can go save her. But then Bastian kind of thinks like, someone could probably get hurt by that thing. Maybe that was a bad idea. He just kind of ponders
like after
on it.
after he does it, he has this moment like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
That might have been a bad idea.
I am also desperately interested to know if the dragon is called Smurg in the original German. It's just so close to being Smaug.
It really is.
It's like the off-brand version of Smaug.
I'm betting those are both based on some Germanic word. Or,
probably,
you know, that means like fire or
Tolkien
smoke
did
or
that.
something like that would be my guess.
Yeah.
We had a few people message us to weigh in on the translated names last time, so hopefully someone
German
can help
fans,
us out here again.
let us know.
Yeah. So my next question is other new characters that may or may not be from the book, and that is Rockbiter returns with his baby, Junior, who is a toddler rock giant who runs around screaming and is terrifying / adorable. I'm not sure which.
I don't know if I'd say adorable.
Is Junior in the book?
No Rockbiter baby, and that thing is horrifying.
It's really
It's like yet another reason
a
not to
choice.
have children.
Yes.
They might look like
They
a
might look like a
Rottweiler baby.
Rottweiler baby.
It screams, and I didn't like it. Although
I
good
don't
to see
disagree.
that Rockbiter is doing good.
Yeah, where's Mrs. Rockbiter? Does he just like produce like, you know, like this is just like split off of him, like it's like an avalanche happens and then it's like
It's my baby. Yeah.
Rockbiter Jr. There you go. So is Rockbiter even in the second half?
No, he never comes back.
No.
Okay. Okay. I thought I remember you saying that he wasn't, or maybe he wasn't.
It's not in the movie, the first movie, where he kind of just resets everything and everyone's back. It's more in the book. It's more like slowly he creates Fantasia again, and really the only people who are back are like Moonchild and Atreyu and Valcor, I think.
So this was interesting. One of his missions on this that he says is like, okay, well, I have to, because, in the first one, he had to name the childlike empress. So they did a similar thing in this one. He has to name whatever this new mystical force that is corrupting Fantasia and making the rocks empty, and like, so that the rockbiter isn't getting any nutrition out of them. And ultimately later they find out that it's also like the lobster creature things are hollow. And he's like, I need to name it. He's like, I'll have to name it. And I'm like, well, it's clearly the nothing, right? Like, is that not the nothing? Like, I felt like I was going crazy. Like, what this is already. It's the nothing. And then later we find out he does name it, that it's the emptiness. And I was a little confused I wanted to know if this whole emptiness thing is in the book and why it's not just the nothing, or what's going on with that.
So the short answer is no.
Okay.
And no. Bastian does name some things throughout the second half of the book, but there's not an overarching like bad thing like there is in the first movie / first half of the book. I don't necessarily mind the movie mirroring the nothing with the emptiness.
Okay.
But
there is like this theme of emptiness in the book because Zaida can control empty things, which is why her metal things are empty. And that's why she wants to essentially make Bastian empty inside so she can control him. But it's not like something that's like affecting the landscape or the world. And I kind of just felt like a bad sequel, like the nothing to the emptiness.
It's
like back. It's pretty similar.
I will say that it's interesting that because I don't know if I either missed that in the movie or if they don't even try to make that clear in the movie that Zaida can control empty things.
It's not. I don't think it's specifically said, but I think she does say like, "I'll make his head empty," and then you find out that her soldiers are empty. Maybe it's more up to you to kind of make that connection.
Interesting. Because to me, the way I read it, it was that it's just like things are becoming empty, similar to how the nothing is just kind of consuming things, and her control over whatever she had control over, I thought, didn't really have anything to do with it, or it wasn't the vibe I got in the movie. I thought she was just like, she's just a sorceress and she can control these they're like do her bidding or whatever. But that makes, I don't know why they wouldn't have just made that clear, because that is an interesting idea of like she can control things that are empty, and then that tying into her motivation for, I don't know. I feel like that makes more sense in the book. But speaking of Zaida and her castle, in the movie he has to get to the 5. I don't know what it's called. They keep calling it something, but it looks like a giant hand. Basically, it's got like 5 fingers, and I want to know if this hand castle is in the movie and also, or in the book, and also does it shoot death lasers from its fingertips? Because that's awesome.
Yep. Zaida does live in a hand castle shaped like a hand, and it has like eyes on it that are the windows. It does have a name. I can't remember what it is.
Yes, it does. I couldn't. Yeah.
I don't have my book with me.
It's not important.
I don't remember there being lasers though.
Yeah, I don't recall any mention of lasers either.
I thought it was funny in the movie too that the lasers seem to have like a targeting mode, and then when Bastian gets hit by the laser, it's blue and he's like, and it like hurts or whatever, but then it like turns red and starts focusing in. It's like gonna zap him and blow him up, I guess, or whatever.
Set phasers to kill.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was really interesting. Atreyu just like uses Arin as a mirror. I don't know. The whole scene was wild, but no death lasers in the book, which is disappointing. This is one of the moments that stuck out the most in my head from as a child, is these things. Is Atreyu shows up to storm the castle. Him and Bastian are going to go, break into the castle. I don't know what their plan is at this point. Ultimately, their plan becomes like, we're going to hold Zaida hostage and make her free the childlike empress. But I guess that was their plan the whole time. But in order to get in, they need help. And Atreyu has a bag full of tie-dyed eggs that he sets down, that then burst open, and little tiny creatures riding vehicles come out that also are shooting fireworks. And it's wild, and this seems to distract the lobster monster thingies. And it's very strange, and I don't... Ultimately, they just kind of like use it as a distraction and run, like Atreyu or Bastion just kind of runs past the guards, I guess, while this is happening. Is any of that from the book? Those things are... I don't know if they're awesome, but as a kid, they vividly stuck in my memory.
That was really something in the movie. It's not from the book.
Not at all?
Not at all.
That really struck me as like a Home Alone kind of gadget.
Yeah.
It's an odd moment. I feel like it doesn't fit in the world of the movie.
You know what I thought? I thought that like because there's like actually like 3 like warriors that travel with them in the book. I thought maybe they were going to somehow be in the bag and they were going to pop out or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Because he does say warriors. Atreyu does call them warriors. He's like, I have my
But
warriors.
it's like, where did he get
like
those? What are those? Yeah.
No idea. And then the thing that's really weird is that they end up just being like fireworks. I think they're supposed to be creatures, but
they look like little wind-up toys.
They look like wind-up toys, and I can't tell if in the movie they're supposed to be living creatures, and the effect they did to make that was just like these little like firework wind-up toy-looking things, or if they're supposed to actually be just like little firework wind-up toys in the universe. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Because we know tiny creatures exist,
right?
So I don't know. It was weird, but I guess I liked it. I don't know.
You can like it. It's okay.
Well, as a kid, I liked it. I don't know if it makes a lot of sense or what, but as a kid, I remember thinking that it was cool because I liked fireworks as a kid. And he's got these dope fireworks that come out of eggs. Tie-dyed eggs. We're just like got all the holidays slammed into one here. He's got tie-dyed Easter eggs and fireworks come out of them.
And they're in a sack like Santa Claus.
Sack like Santa. We got every holiday. Yeah, every holiday. That's right. You heard me. All three of them that exist. As they're getting ready to go do their mission or something, Bastion's like, all right, I'm going to go in there. And he goes, give me 5 to Atreyu. And this is like a running gag with Atreyu in this movie is he doesn't understand like Earth turns of phrases, which was not a thing in the first movie. Well, they're not together, to be fair, much in the first movie. And he says, give me 5 what? Or give you 5 what? And I remember that line as a kid made me laugh a lot. Is it in the book?
No, none of those cute little moments are in the book. Although the book was written in like the late 70s, maybe people didn't say give me 5 back then.
Yeah, I don't know what the history of Gimme 5
They
is.
probably did, but we could probably look up the Wikipedia on high fives.
The high five history dive. All right. So Bastion then has to climb into the hand castle, and he gets to the side of the castle, and there's like a few handholds, and he starts climbing, but then, oh no, there's nowhere to go, and he has to use Orn, and he starts wishing for every single handhold, and he keeps saying, and another one, and it felt stupid. I'm like, dude, why is that how you're doing this? Why don't you wish for a jetpack? Why are you the most uncreative kid that has ever existed?
And every time he loses a memory, every step. So he lost like 30 memories just going up there.
Yeah. Is that scene from the book? Because I thought it was, I mean, I get it. Because I get the tension of the scene and how it's effective. Because I remember as a kid being like, no, every single time he's like, I get it. And it works. But it's also kind of dumb. Is it in the book?
It's not. Okay. No.
I was just like, oh my God, you idiot. Just say, I wish for a flight of stairs to take me all the way up. Or like you said, a jetpack. But
done. Yeah. If I was him right off the bat, I wish for a jetpack. Boom. Done.
This goes with the next thing in here, but like it's weird that like Bastion in the movie is at first he's kind of like hesitant to even make wishes, almost like he knows that you shouldn't do it, but like he doesn't at that point. So it was odd.
Yeah, it is weird because you are right. Like immediately from the beginning, he's like, no, he won't do it. Like he doesn't. He hesitates like, for a while. Yeah, because the bird tells him to do it right away, and he's like, no. He's like, wish the water into. Yeah. because it's acid or whatever. He goes, wish it into water. And Bastian's like, no, what if it needs to be acid? I'm not going to do that. No. Like, yeah, he's hesitant. But then from like towards the end, he's just like, bam, let's go. Wishing for every
Which is like interesting because if I had been given a magic wishing necklace as a kid,
Yeah.
it would have been all wishes all the time.
Yeah. Right off the bat. Let's go. Speaking of wishing for things, they get into the castle and he saves Atreyu from the giant pit of death. He's like trapped hanging on a chain over a giant lava pit. And he breaks them free, but now they have to fight the lobster monsters and they need a weapon. Bastian's like, or Atreyu's like, we need weapons. And Bastian wishes for a spray can. And Atreyu says, is a spray can a weapon where you're from? And I was like, first off, Atreyu, how do you know what a spray can is? Second, why did he wish for a spray can? It is a good line, though, because he goes, is it a spray can a weapon? He goes, yeah, people use it against walls, which makes me chuckle. But does he wish for a spray can to fight anybody with in the book?
He does not.
Okay.
I don't know. That was a weird moment for me. I was like, he could have wished for anything.
Well, what could he would
Like
have wished for? Like, you know, a sword they could just like run into it. He did something small and creative. He made them blind so they would fall over. Like, you can't fight like brawn with brawn is kind of what I was getting out of it.
Yeah. It is creative, but it seems the thing that was funny to me is it almost seems like he doesn't know what he's going to do with it at first when he wishes for it.
Yeah.
He's like, a spray can? And then he seems like
Maybe he's not good at
it
thinking
didn't
on his
seem like he
feet.
had a plan, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Oh, I'll spray him in the face with it." It's like, okay, you should have
Yeah.
come up with that plan before you wished for a spray can.
I kind of thought in this moment, because he does get a sword in the book.
Oh, does he?
He gets like a magic sword that only works for him. So I thought they might like sneak that in here in the movie, but just a spray can.
Just a spray can. It just maces. All those
Maybe they
lobster
didn't
guys.
want to be like violent and put weapons in kids' hands. Maybe, you know.
Yeah,
Maybe.
it's possible. Yeah, because he doesn't use any weapons at any point in this movie. He just kind of wishes his way through it. But you know who does use weapons in this movie? Freaking Atreyu, which was hilarious to me. Is he literally says in the scene we just talked about, he's like, "We need a weapon, Bastian." And then the next scene, they go and they storm the throne room, and Atreyu has a bow and arrow. And I'm like, wait, where was your bow? All right,
Had it
great.
the whole time.
Yeah, apparently he had it the whole time. But they storm into the room, and this line is amazing because like Zaida refuses to help them, and Atreyu just pulls his bow out and aims at her and says, "Perhaps she feels it's a good day to die." And I was like, "All right, Atreyu, fucking hard ass over here." Is that line in the book? Does he threaten to murder Zaida with his bow?
That line is not in the book, but it is chef's kiss. I loved it.
He says it like a
fantastic.
couple times, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he says it earlier before they go into the castle. They're
Right,
like, "Oh, I don't know if this will work," and he goes, "Well, it's a good day to die." And it's like, why is this Atreyu's thing now? It's
I'm guessing because they were like, "Oh my god, we got to make him look really brave," because that's like what Bastian wishes he is, I guess. And I mean, in the book, he's more, he's softer. He's very benevolent. He still has the same like I would do anything for Bastian like energy, but he's not as violent as this.
not rolling around with a bow and arrow threatening to murder people. Yeah. I love that moment in the movie. It just makes me crack up. So speaking of other fun gadgets, he ends up, they take Zaida and she's going to take him to the childlike empress, or says she's going to. But really her plan is to sort of corrupt Bastian in her sweet, like, horseless carriage thing, which has a name. She calls it, I assume that was in the book, or was it not, that carriage thing that she rides?
Oh, I don't know.
Because she calls it something
It
in the
has
movie
some
that I can't
weird
remember.
name.
Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah, it had a
matter.
name in the book too.
Oh, so it was in the book.
Well, it not like a her carriage thing is in the book, but she calls it like a. Gosh,
I know, and you don't have to
know.
look for it. It's fine, because she also calls it that in the movie, but I just can't.
Well,
remember
like
what it is.
later,
It
like
doesn't-
they refer to her and her carriage and her like group of people as a litter, and I was like, "What is
yes,
that?"
that's what I'm thinking of.
Oh,
And I was
dude.
like, that just must be like another name for like a entourage or like a motorcade or something
Yeah.
like that. It's just I'd never heard it
Yeah.
referred to as a litter before, but
No, yeah, me either. I thought she called it something weird, like a velocipede or something. I don't know. Maybe I might be making that up, but
that's good.
Yeah, I think it kind of works. So she gets in there, or he gets in there with her, and she gives him this belt that has a sweet eyeball on it that is like an actual eyeball in the movie, which is creepy and cool. But when he wears it and he pushes a button, it turns him invisible. Does he get a sweet invisibility belt in the book?
Yes, he does. And it more or less looks the same. It doesn't have an eye on it, though.
That's the coolest part in the movie. Is that weird, creepy eyeball that like blinks when he
does put it on, and he's like, I can't see myself. Like that's straight from the book.
Does he have to wish it off?
No.
Yeah, I thought that was dumb. I was like, wait, what?
Just take it off.
Just switch the switch back the other way. Like, why? Okay, great. Obviously, the movie's just trying to like,
everything you do, just wish it.
Yeah. Does Zaida slowly corrupt Bastian and turn him against Atreyu? And then does Bastian murder Atreyu? He just tosses him off a cliff and straight up murders him in the movie. It's like, wow. Does that happen in the book?
So Zaida does do a lot to turn Bastian against Atreyu, but in the book it doesn't all come from her or even start with her.
Okay.
Bastian kind of already has like some suspicions before we even meet Zaida.
You mean suspicions about like Atreyu?
Yeah,
Gotcha.
mostly because Atreyu wants to help Bastian get home, and Bastian, he doesn't quite like voice it yet, but he doesn't want to go home, right? And he's like, they're just trying to get rid of me, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I mean, it is kind of a funny moment in the book because they're like traveling, and then Atreyu's like, "Don't you think you should be heading home?"
Yeah,
boy, looking kind of late.
He kind of almost says that like seemingly like as soon as Bastian got to Fantasia.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, time for you to leave. Get out of here. Huh.
And Bastian does not throw Atreyu off a cliff in the book, but he does grievously wound him.
Whoa.
At one
Stabs
point,
him like in the chest.
Yeah. Yeah.
It might be like a slash, not a stab, but he doesn't. I don't think that Bastian knows if he's okay or not. So the sentiment is still
he doesn't
the
know
same.
for a while if he's okay or not.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't know in the movie either, or like because I didn't realize. It's like, oh, it looks like he hurt him or knocked him out in the movie, but then later we find out, nope, he was dead. Like apparently he was just.
I was
dead.
surprised the movie went there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does Nimbly? He's not in the book. All right, never mind. I just realized as soon as I started asking this, because in the movie he like turns on Zaida and he helps Bastian save the day, and he's motivated by this like very weird meta realization about the Neverending Story and how they're all in a Neverending Story because he sees the memory of Bastian with his mom. I think it works, but it's completely fabricated for the movie.
It is, but I thought it was a really good moment because, I mean, I didn't know that, like, this bird was going to end up being a good character, and it was kind of nice. It's like, oh, he's kind of been with him the whole movie, and then, like, he's moved by Bastian's memory. I thought it was cute, and I think it was good.
Yeah, I actually like that moment. I like as much as his character is a little grating at times, the bird, he's also very interesting and kind of cool. And again, we talked about how he's a kind of cool design. And I do like that that arc we have for him where he sort of it seems implied that he's like kind of working for Zaida, not necessarily because he wants to, but because he kind of has to or something.
Yeah.
And then that arc he gets of becoming sympathetic for Bastian and then ending out helping him. And I even like his ending where he's just like, I don't remember the line he says, but he's like, come with us. Bastian's like, all right, cool. Come with us. And he's like, nope, I'm a spy. Gotta go and doing spy things. The spy who lives to spy another day or so. I don't know what he says. He says something like that. And I thought that was cool where he's just like, nope, I'm going to go pretend I'm still working for her. Bye. I thought it was cool. Finally, we get to the big confrontation. He arrives, and he has one wish left. And Zaida's like, use your wish to go home. And if he does that, then basically Fantasia is hers somehow. Like, because he can't save the childlike empress, I guess, at that moment. Because if he doesn't use his wish to save the childlike empress, if he uses it to go home, then she gets to reign over Fantasia, I guess is the implication. But he has a trick up his sleeve, which didn't feel particularly foreshadowed or set up in any way for me in the movie. But he wishes for her to have a heart. And this destroys her because she's so evil. She literally explodes. Well, her guards explode. She gets zaps out of existence or something.
Yeah, she vanishes into the ether.
Yeah. Is that how he vanquishes Zaida in the book?
No, none of that is from the book.
Oh, okay. I assume we're going to talk later about what happens in the book.
I have a note on that later.
Okay. Because I got to be honest, I'm not sure I understood why he realized that was what he needed to do to defeat her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It didn't feel like the movie set that up to me at all. I mean, it's kind of clever and a sort of a generic I wish you had empathy kind of.
Yeah, but then it would have made more sense if then she didn't explode then and have such a violent end.
Yes. Yes. It would have made more sense if she cries like she does.
And then she's
and then
nice.
just turns into a normal sad person or something. It would have been more interesting.
More on that later.
Okay. She just gets zapped into nothingness, and it's very strange. And then in order to escape Fantasia and go back, not escape, I guess, but in order to, his click your heels 3 times and say there's no place like home, he has to high dive off a waterfall in Fantasia to get home, thus conquering his fear of heights from the beginning of the film, rounding out that story arc, proving that he does have the courage to do these things, and he does, and is returned home to his father. Is that how he leaves Fantasia in the book? Does he high dive off of a waterfall?
No, but it does involve water.
Oh,
there's what is it? They call it the
waters of life.
Yeah, and basically, I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. It was kind of hard to read.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a fountain or something, right?
Yeah, it's like a fountain, and the 2 snakes from Arin are there, and they're a double gate, so he has to pass through one, and he's waiting in the water, and then when he passes through the second one is when he crosses over and is able to go home.
Huh.
And the water of life, it's a thing, right? It's not just literally water. It represents something bigger. You share water, you share it with people, and it does. Just too long ago I read the book. It's 2 weeks ago. Because he talks about sharing the water of life with his father, and it's important somehow. I forget exactly why.
It's important somehow. Yeah. That's also, there's a German fairy tale called The Water of Life, apparently.
That does not surprise me. There's a German fairy tale for everything.
Oh, it feels like they might have pulled some inspiration from that, potentially. I don't want to read this whole fairy tale, but just skimming it, it looks like potentially Neverending Story definitely could have pulled some. There's a princess in a castle, and there's gates, and it has to do with a prince and his father who's dying or something. So it feels like maybe there's some ties there. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't read the whole thing. But all right, that's all we got for Was That in the Book? Let's go ahead. I have one question for Lost in Adaptation.
Just show me the way to get out of here, and I'll be on my way.
Is it lost?
Yes, and I want to get unlost as soon as possible.
So I love this movie, but man, the plot is kind of incoherent. I feel like it's a kids movie. Sometimes that can happen because they don't care. Kids don't care. They just want to watch a cool movie. And one of the things that confused me is that when they get to Zaida's castle, they arrive at the gate and then they just start yelling summoning her basically. And I don't know what their plan was because they never discussed a plan, I feel like, in the movie. And I was like, is their plan just to and they don't have weapons. They don't have any way to. I don't know what their plan was when they confronted by the giants and Zaida. What were they gonna do? And ultimately, they just get captured and have to use spray cans and stuff to fight their way out. But does that happen like that in the book? And if so, what was their plan? and maybe that was the same plan in the movie, and maybe there was a scene cut. I don't know. It just felt like I was like, what are they doing?
So they do storm Zaida's castle in the book, but it's not really like a climax point like it is in the movie. In the book, they kind of stumble across her and her castle while they're on their way to the Ivory Tower.
I think they do in the movie. I can't tell. I was never sure what they're in. Like, obviously they needed to save the childlike empress, but I wasn't sure like if they were going to the. I can't remember now. I watched this movie last night. I can't remember now.
So they kind of stumble across her, and she ends up taking some of their company hostage. And their plan in the book is for everyone else, because there's a lot of people with them at this point who have like joined their trek.
Oh my god,
to
there's
the Ivory
eventually
Tower.
thousands, I think, that end up joining them along the way. And in the movie, there's like 3 of them, but they have to. Yeah, I understand.
So their plan is for everyone else to make it look like they're retreating. And then Bastian, Atreyu, and Falkor are going to launch a stealth rescue mission.
And Atreyu like impersonates Bastian like at the front door, and then like Bastian sneaks in the side or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would have been more interesting if they had done that. They both just stand there, and then Atreyu gets captured, and Bastian's just like, I'm going to climb a
wishing
wall.
for individual
Yeah,
footholds.
I'm going to go climb a wall. Bye.
That idiot.
Okay. All right, it's time to get to it. We've got Better in the Book.
You like to read?
Oh, yes. I love to read.
What do you like to read?
Everything.
So this is not a fault, really, because I get that the movie has to set things up that the book doesn't, as well as get Bastian to Fantasia ASAP, but I did think that Bastian just, like, popping into Fantasia was kind of boring. Like, compared to in the first movie where he has to, like, read the whole book and, like, slowly is submerged into the story.
Yeah. There's a meta-narrative there about, like, losing yourself in a story for sure.
Yeah.
And we have to,
so
we're confused about what happened in between movies. Like, did he just bring the book back?
He just,
Yeah.
Yeah, why doesn't he have the book anymore? It went back to the store for some reason, and then I guess he had some overdue fines and he had to take it back. Like, I don't know what was going on, but yeah.
I also think that the messaging in the book is much better overall. When Bastian arrives in Fantasia in the book and is given Arin, he like immediately starts using it to wish away all of his faults. Like, he wants to be handsome, he wants to be strong and courageous and wise, just like etc., etc. And he eventually realizes that he's being a shithead, but he still has to lose all of his memories and then work to regain his true self in order to leave Fantasia and return home.
I kind of had basically the same note here about how Bastian's journey of like changing himself. And in the movie, it's like he just wants to be brave. And that's kind of like, let's just pick one thing and that'll be like his thing. But in like the book, he wants to be better in every way, like as he perceives it. And he ends up going down like a bad path where he makes like the wrong wishes mostly about himself. He ends up wishing like to be feared. He wants to be worshipped. At one point, he wants to no longer feel emotion. He wants to be the wisest person in the world, and therefore, like, they have no emotion at all, apparently. That was one of Zaid's things. She was convincing him to do that. And eventually, he's left completely alone. He has nothing. He has nobody, and he barely even knows who he is. And I already said, Zaida does persuade him to make some of these negative wishes about himself, but it's mostly about him and what he perceives as removing things from himself, essentially,
like removing his faults and his flaws. Yeah, and it's something that doesn't come across. Yeah, like you said in the movie, they definitely sort of focus in on being brave or whatever, as being like the thing that he kind of uses Arin for ultimately, and then like sort of being his arc of becoming brave or whatever. But there is a really interesting story in the book, from what you've said, of that kid finding all of a sudden an easy way to turn into the kid he wishes he could be, but the cost that comes with that and all that. There's not really that much of an. There's a little bit of it in the movie, but it's so truncated because it's like there's obviously where he loses himself with and murders Atreyu and whatnot, but it is so truncated in the film that he has those realizations. It seems like over the course of 20 minutes of the film, he goes from like good to evil back to good in like the last 30 minutes.
Yeah, it was pretty fast. In the movie, there was, I could tell they were trying to hint at a little bit of him comparing himself to Atreyu when it comes to the bravery thing, because Atreyu is always doing like these crazy things. Like he's throwing himself into, dangerous situations, and he says like he's willing to die to complete his mission. And Bastian's like not quite there yet. So it's there, but it's not as detailed for sure.
So there's a part in the book where Bastian visits the Desert of Colors. So it's like this huge desert with these all like different colored sand dunes, and there's this huge lion that rules over the desert, and he lives in like a black marble castle.
Does.
And
yes,
doesn't the lion
does.
change color compared to like when he's on the different colored sand dunes?
I think so, yeah. Like when he steps on
chameleon.
like a chameleon.
Yeah. When he steps on a different dune, he like turns a different color. And I just thought it could have been really cool. Like I think even with the VFX at the time, I think it could have been pretty cool looking.
Yeah. It sounds really trippy. Like I'm in and it reminds me of some of the elements from the first movie a little bit more, like the Sphinx and stuff, and it just kind of it harkens back to some of that imagery.
Yeah, like when I first read this book, like that was the chapter that just like stuck out to me that I always remembered, because it's just like, wow, that's so like cool and descriptive and very, very fantastical. There's even more to it than that, because the chapter before that is the night forest, and it's this forest that springs up every night, and it's just like full of these crazy plants and flowers and giant flowers and crazy things, and then like every night it dies and turns into the desert, and then the desert the lion turns to stone every night, and it's a whole thing.
Wow. It's a lot of world
I can't even go into all this crazy stuff that is in the second half of this book, unfortunately.
Bastian at that time also gets Sikanda, his sword.
Oh, this is the sword you mentioned earlier?
The sword of light, so they say in the book.
I think April's right, though. They probably just didn't want him to have a weapon.
Probably
They're going
not.
for like
and the sword only jumps into his hand when he's doing something brave, I think is the idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because then later on, when he is fighting Atreyu, it like won't jump into his hand, and he has to like force it out of the sheath.
The sword's like, this ain't
and
cool.
Then he does something bad.
Not a good idea. I was a little bit sad that the movie omitted Hero Heinrich, which is the guy we mentioned earlier with Smurg. The three other warrior adventure guys that are along with him. I think it's just missing out on some stuff that could have been interesting. Like there's a scene where when Bastian arrives at the Silver City in the book, they're having this like kind of a strongman contest, essentially, to like put together a team to find and protect him.
Oh, Bastian?
Yeah.
But they don't know.
Because like nobody knows where he is.
They don't know that Bastian is Bastian at that point. They just know that he's the person who saved the world is somewhere,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so like they're having this contest, and Bastian like secretly enters it, because at this point he's like wished himself strong and everything.
And fast.
Yeah.
He's like the fastest ever, and he does this really cool thing. But he does this thing because like Hero Heinrich was kind of like bad mouthing Bastian without knowing that he was really in front of him the whole time. Just saying like, oh, what's so great about this guy? Like I could beat him in any feat of strength or whatever. So they do this thing where they throw a deck of cards up in the air, and Heinrich like stabs the ace of hearts just out of the air, and it was like, ooh. And then Bastian does the same thing, but he stabs every card in order. I mean, because that's how fast he is.
That's how good he is, yeah.
I also thought that could have been a source of maybe like some good comic relief.
Yeah.
With like these especially like the three guys who end up traveling with them. There's also a storytelling contest in the book, which I will grant might have ended up kind of boring in the movie, but it is something that relates to the themes and to Bastian's character and what he considers himself to be actually good at, making up stories.
Yeah, I liked that as well. And it's throughout the book that Bastian creates stories of people and places in Fantastica. And as he kind of says them out loud, they just kind of come into being. And that really only happens with Smurg in the movie. But at least it's in the movie that like he creates stories, you know?
Yeah, and it's kind of like a trippy like mind melt in the book, because it's this idea that like when he speaks these stories, they just always existed.
Yeah, in the world of Fantasia, they're just like, oh, that thing has always been there. But he's like, well, I think I just created that like last night, you know.
Yeah, that would have been. I think they could have done it more in the movie for sure. Because he kind of does it with Smurg, but other than that, like you said, then just nothing. And it seems like the obvious, because we know he's a reader and that like storytelling and stuff is sort of his thing. It seems like the obvious way to wrap up the storyline and have him you know, win or whatever and save the day is through his trait that he has, that it was innate to him, that is his. It seems like, and obviously maybe we'll get to how the whole thing wraps up here shortly, but it seems rather obvious to me that would be the way you would go, as opposed to just like a random wishing for somebody to have a heart. I don't know. I mean, like if he could have told a story that created a thing and that thing that always was somehow saved. I don't know. It seems like the movie had its answer right there and just kind of fumbled it. But
I mentioned earlier, but the buildup of Bastian's mistrust of Atreyu and Falkor is much slower in the book. The book is not nearly as truncated as the movie is, so it works out. The movie also cuts Bastian's actual turn to the dark side. We get like a teeny little taste of it in the movie, but in the book, when they get to the Ivory Tower and Moonchild isn't there, he names himself her successor and tries to crown himself emperor. And then Atreyu and Falkor show up with an army of rebels, and there's like a bloody battle. And he basically stabs Atreyu in the chest, like we said.
This is much more interesting than what we get in the movie. This is much more epic. Like this feels a lot more epic. I kind of get maybe why the movie changed it so that it was a much more like manageable story than like Atreyu showing up with a band of armies and then meeting on the battlefield. Or like, I think making the movie, I would love to see that redone now, this movie redone now with like a modern budget and stuff, and do this more epic, because this feels more like something along the lines of Lord of the Rings or something, where there's just more world going on.
The world is very big.
It reminded me a lot of Harry Potter and like the Battle of Hogwarts. It's called like the Battle for the Ivory Tower, like literally that's what the chapter's called. And like this half of the second half of the book especially would lend itself really well to a mini series, I think, because each chapter is like its own episode basically. It's just so much, and it would cost a lot, and that's why they couldn't do it in the movie, because there's just too much.
So after this battle, Bastian is walking around and he ends up at the city of the old emperors, which is so creepy. It was my favorite part of the second half of the book.
Yeah, I had that as well. It's like this weird like city that's kind of like is it MC Escher who did like the stairs that go nowhere? It's like that. Yeah. And it's just filled with other people, humans who've entered Fantastica, and it's where they go when they forget who they are because they made too many wishes. And there's like this creepy monkey that's like just like
he's like the caretaker.
He's like just watching them, but like he's just like amusing himself with all the weird things they do. So because they all forget who they are, so they're like doing strange things like writing down letters, but they don't make any sense, or they're pushing around like shopping carts with like weird things in them. Like they just don't know what they're doing.
And, like wearing lampshades.
Yeah, so
just like random stuff.
I think it was a message about like not living in a fantasy. I think like don't like let yourself be too involved in a fantasy world because you'll lose touch with reality, I think.
And it also sounds like potentially it seems like a warning to Atreyu, or not Atreyu, sorry, Bastion.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Because, does he know I don't know if we talked about this, does he know he's losing his memories in the book?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, at this point he does, yeah.
Okay,
I think at this point
so,
he's like, I only have 2 wishes left or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So he does know, and this is could be his future, I guess.
Yes.
Essentially, when he gets there. Yeah, that would have been cool. Because also it reminds me of which they could have done this because the MC Escher thing that you mentioned, the Labyrinth did that, or not the Labyrinth, Labyrinth did that, where there's that one scene where David Bowie is like walking around that staircase that like loops around on itself and upside down.
That go nowhere.
That looks cool.
Yeah.
Yep, they totally could have done that.
Yeah.
And it could have been really cool. So then shortly after that, he's journeying because he's realized that he only has a couple of wishes left, so he like really needs to just go home. Mm-hmm. So he's journeying to try to find a way to do that, and he ends up at the House of Change, which I also really liked. And he meets Dame Iola. Or Aola?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure. I'm going to say Iola because I like that better. Who is like a tree woman. And he's like staying in this house with her, and she is like feeding him fruit.
Fruit that like grows off of her.
Yeah, like grows off of her. And I think it could have been really interesting and creepy because it's also kind of ominous in the book. Like, there are several turns where you aren't sure if Dame Iola is good or if Bastion has gotten caught in a trap.
Yeah, she's very, like, motherly, and you're like, okay, like, Bastion clearly has mommy issues, and so that's seemingly what he needed at that point, but he's, like, there for a while, and he doesn't...
Yeah, he's, like, there for a while, and there's this one point where she's talking about, like, how she has always wanted a baby, but she never had a baby.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is kind of creepy. And I mean, and usually in like fantasy stories, when a human is in a fantasy world and they can't stop eating,
it's true.
It's usually not a good thing.
I mean, I didn't really read this as ominous, but I totally get it. Like, I totally pick up on that now.
It is interesting. I'm surprised they didn't give any of that to, because that was something I thought that the movie kind of didn't play into at all, which I thought was interesting, is that the whole like mom dynamic with Zaida.
Yeah, I was totally thinking that as well, but it didn't the movie didn't really lean into that.
Yeah, and I'm surprised they didn't, because it would have been really easy for them to have her be like, oh, I never had a child, we can rule together. Like, like that seems like a very easy, like, you know, way to turn that in a way that makes sense for his backstory and everything, but also kind of ties in some of these elements that you're talking about here from this scene, with her talking about, you know, how she didn't have it. I don't know. Seems like they could have pulled some inspiration from that and done that with Zaida, and I was really surprised they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like in the movie, did you feel a little confused about why Bastion like trusts Zaida like immediately? Because in the movie, it seemed like it came out of nowhere. And it is kind of like that in the book. But I think in the book, it's more about Bastion's pride and like, oh, like this woman is, you know, bowing to me and seemingly giving me the subservience that I think that I want, that I'm not getting from Atreyu and Falkor. And that's kind of why he likes her. But it does happen like immediately, kind of like that. But in the movie, I was like with Atreyu, it's like, why? She's your prisoner. Like, why are you being so nice to her? Like, immediately, you know? Yeah,
I think I got it a little bit in the movie that she very quickly like gives like sort of it picks up on how she needs to talk to him to like feed into his ego and stuff, because there was a little bit of setup, like you mentioned, Katie, about him distrusting Atreyu before they even get to the castle and stuff. There's like one scene or something where he seems, I don't even remember the exact context of it, where he seems sort of upset with Atreyu or something, or like distrustful of him. And so I think they tried to go for that in the movie. I'm not sure it was super effective, because it does just, I think part of it just is because it's like every movie ever with such a short runtime. It's just like they don't have time to develop those characters and have the plot go in a direction at the same. It's very tough to do that with a story this like expansive. Like we got to go all these places and do all these things. They just don't have the character time that they need. I feel like
I honestly thought the movie was trying to go for like he's a young teenage boy and she's like a pretty lady kind of angle.
There's that too.
I mean, I think he's a little young for that, but it's very possible.
Is he? I thought he was like 13.
I have no idea.
I read him
I thought he was
like,
still supposed to be like 10, but I could be wrong.
I read him as like maybe 12.
Yeah, he's like I read him as like on that edge of like preteen puberty area where he might be taken by her, but like I don't know,
like very very pretty lady.
Yeah, pretty lady. I mean, I remember when I was a kid and I watched this movie, I was taken by Zaida, so I was a fan. I was like, I don't know what's going on with her, but I'm into it.
So after he leaves the House of Change, there's another part of the story where he comes to a mine. And
a mine! Sorry.
And what they mine at this mine is humans' lost dreams. So like when you have not like that, like when you have a dream like at night and then you forget it when you wake up, your dreams go to Fantastica.
Oh, okay.
Or Fantasia.
Whatever,
and they mine them out of this mine. And Bastian has to find one of his own lost dreams to help him like remember who he is so that he can continue with his journey.
And
sounds trippy and
and like the way I kind of pictured it, I think the way it was described, it's kind of like pieces of glass with pictures on it. Almost, I imagine it kind of like being like stained glass or something. And Bastian has like no memories at this point, like at all. He doesn't even know what he's doing there, and he ends up being there for a long time.
Is this but like he doesn't even remember his name at this point?
It could be.
Yeah,
his last memory is his name, and I don't know. I'm not sure. It's around this time, but it's neat because he ends up mining a picture of his father, and he doesn't even recognize who it is. But something in his brain sees a connection to it. And
he knows it's important.
Yeah, and it's a cute little moment. It's similar to what happens in the movie where his last memory is of his father, and then it brings the whole connection to he's got to go back to his father.
Yeah, because he does have a similar moment in the movie too, where they ask him about his mom, and he goes who or whatever. Like he doesn't even remember his mom at that point.
But I think he still remembers his dad, though.
He does. Yeah, his father in the movie is his last memory. It's not his name; it's his dad. So
this goes for the entire book, but I like the pictures and the titles that open every new chapter. Your book had this, right, Katie?
Yes.
Okay. I'm pretty sure we have the same version. So every new chapter has this artwork in it. It has like a big letter for like the first letter of the chapter. And it has like illustrations basically of this new creature or place that you're about to see. And every chapter is like a new place or a new creature. And it just makes you excited. Like you're at this new place and you're just like, oh, what is this thing? And you're looking at this and you're like, okay. And then eventually you get to it. And then I would always go back and look at the picture. And I'm like, oh, cool. Like it just kind of made me feel like a little kid again. And, most books I read don't have illustrations like that. So I like it.
Because I do remember. Yeah, I remember a similar feeling about like Harry Potter, which has the little picture.
Yeah,
there's little illustration at the beginning of every chapter, and you don't know, the first time you're reading it, you don't know what that is going to be.
I didn't have any pictures in my. I don't have any pictures in my Harry Potter books.
Your Harry Potter doesn't have at the beginning of the chapter.
Does Canadian Harry Potter not have chapter heading pictures?
No, there's just the picture on the front of the book jacket. I mean, the Canadian version is also the like British version, I think, as far as the artwork
is the
goes.
American one the only one that has?
I don't know. I've honestly never thought about it. I just assumed that they all had those.
No,
pictures.
I didn't have any pictures.
Absolutely. So there's a little at the beginning of every chapter. There's just a tiny little illustration here. I'm going to turn the webcam on so you can see.
Let me see.
This is great podcasting content. But
oh no!
There's just like a little drawing at the heading of every chapter.
And that's every book has that.
Yeah.
Yes, every single one.
Whoa.
And it's always like something from that chapter.
Yeah, so it's very similar. It's like, because you're like, I don't know what this is going to be, but I want to know what.
I don't know why I remember like very specifically the drawing of Peeves from the first book. There's an illustration of Peeves, like the first chapter he's at Hogwarts.
That's so weird.
That's crazy.
I had no idea that was like an American edition
never
thing.
thought about that.
My mind's blown. I've been missing out. I mean, it's too late now because they've already made movies of it, so it's just it's over. But yeah, that's crazy.
But yeah, that is cool. I like that.
I found the picture at the front of that's their Smurg.
Oh man,
yeah,
he's got his grasshopper
have to post
legs.
that on.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
That's probably the craziest. Like, what does this thing look like? Creature.
Yeah.
I have a note here about how in the book there's just so many great characters and events that the movie omitted. We'll probably get to most of them, but there's just so many. I can't. Just a general note. They just couldn't include everything. There was a lot. Yeah. And finally, I liked the conversation in the book that Bastian has with Coriander at the end. Basically, in the book, it happens just like in the movie. He returns to his dad. His dad's not reading the Neverending Story in the book, though. He's just been out looking for him all night, and he's like, oh my God, I miss you so much. And they have a great reunion. And Bastian tells his dad all about his adventures in Fantasia, and his dad believes him. And they basically both resign to repair their relationship, and they're both like super happy. And then the next day, Bastian goes back to the bookstore. He returns the book, and he has this little conversation with Coriander about, again, he tells him about his whole story. And then Coriander says, well, I've been to Fantastica too, and I made it out. And they kind of bond, and they kind of agree to like be friends. And he's like, I'll come back someday and we'll talk more about it. And it was kind of a neat little bonding thing about them. It kind of reminded me of the beginning of the movie, because it was like, oh, they're like friends now. Okay,
Yeah.
He goes there all the time. Yeah.
They have chit chats about books.
Yeah, and I think like the last line of the book is like Coriander saying like, I think that Bastian is going to share the water of life with many, many people. Like in other words, people are reading his book right now, like you, and it's we're all,
he says,
a part of the Neverending Story.
If I'm not mistaken, you will show many others the way to Fantastica, and they will bring us the water of life.
Yeah, it's a cute little ending.
Yeah.
All right, it's time to find out what they thought was better in the movie.
My life has taught me one lesson, Hugo, and not the one I thought it would. Happy endings only happen in the movies.
Okay, so I have several here to start out. I did like the one illustration in the book that we see at the beginning of the movie that's of the childlike empress.
Yeah.
I thought it was like a nice vintage looking, like it made me think of like an Art Nouveau kind of illustration.
Yeah.
I kind of liked that the movie set up Zaida as a villain right away. I thought it was a good choice considering where the movie goes with her, which is like not really different from what happens in the book, but like slightly different. And I also thought that her initial facelessness was cool and creepy.
Yeah, it was a good ad, I think.
Yeah. While I do think that the book is better messaging wise, as I mentioned before, I will admit that I preferred the movie's attempt at a more succinct plot. The second half of this book is 13 chapters, and if I'm being honest, I really didn't enjoy the first 9 or so. Like there were parts that I liked, but the story kind of meandered around and felt a little bit to me like Endo was like making it up as he went along.
Yeah.
Like for me, it didn't really get interesting, like, oh my gosh, I want to read this until the last handful of chapters.
It was very episodic.
Yeah. And part of it, I will admit, is I enjoy that kind of storytelling less when it's for the podcast because it's hard to take notes on.
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
Because I don't have a good grasp on what's going to be important. So I like stress myself out. Like, do I need to make a note about this? is this going to come back?
Yeah.
Do I need to remember this character? And I just like really stress myself out about it.
Yeah. That is interesting. Yeah, but to be fair, it was definitely, I could tell, because I mean, you mentioned several times, you're like, I'm having a tough time.
Yeah,
like,
I was having a really whiny moment with it Friday night. You can say it, it's fine.
No,
I was whiny.
I was just gonna say, you said you were having a tough time getting through it, but then when you got towards the second half of the second half, you seemed to fly right through it, and you seemed to enjoy it. So
Artax is also back in the movie.
Oh, thank God.
So that's better. And Bastian got to ride Artax.
He did.
Which is cool.
He got to ride Artax and Falcor. And I don't know if I mentioned this in the first episode. I think I did. But in the book, Bastian doesn't ride Falcor until like way into the second half. And it's like, really? Bastian, what are you doing? Like, that should have been your first thing to do it.
Like priorities,
That's
man.
what it is in the movie, which makes sense. But
yeah. It does make sense. Yeah.
Like he's already kind of having a falling out, I think, with Atreyu at that point. So,
yeah. So there's this scene in the book that there's a couple scenes that I don't mind that the movie cut. One of them is Bastian meets these like worm-like creatures that are sad and cry all the time. And their tears make the acid ocean around the Silver City.
Oh. And that actually makes the city silver, which is what it's what he was saying in the movie. I don't remember how, but the acid lake does make the city look like that.
It does actually somehow polish or whatever,
but they're sad because they're so ugly and they like don't want anyone to look at them. So Bastian wishes that they won't be ugly, and then they all turn into like these terrifying clown butterflies.
Their names are like, okay, when they're sad, they're called, I think, the Acherish, and when they're happy, like they're called like the Schlamoofs, something like that.
And it was just like, it was a very chaotic scene in the book after they become these butterflies and they're like swarming and like they just like yell
insufferable.
Nonsense.
Yeah. And Bastian hates them.
I hated them.
I agree
too.
that we don't need that in the movie. But I liked there was kind of a lesson in there. Not entirely sure what it is, but it's like he created these sad worm things without thinking about the consequences of creating a creature like that, without thinking about how horrible an existence it would be. He created it during the storytelling contest, I think.
Yeah.
And then when he meets them, he's sickened by them. And so he's like, I'm going to do a good thing and make them the opposite of what they are. And then they become the horrible clown butterflies that can't listen. They don't do anything. They don't do anything productive at all. And then later Bastian's like, I don't think I did a good thing.
I really fudged that one up.
Yeah, exactly. And then later they come back and I think they break his memory, don't they? Is that what happens?
Yes. Yeah, after he meets them again, after he's mined the memory of his dream with his dad, and they like swarm around him and end up breaking it.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's definitely a message there, at least from what it sounds like. He said if he created these things during his storytelling contest, sort of without considering does he, when he's doing the storytelling contest, does he know that what he's saying will be like actually realized? Like,
I think he knows, but he's not really thinking about it, you know?
Yeah. So I guess the message there would then be like that. Yeah. There's this, the power that comes with,
creation.
I mean, you could, that I think you could read it several ways. I think one could be literally the power that comes with like, or the responsibility that with great power comes great responsibility. If you have the power to create life or whatever, I create life. And if you're the power that comes with that sort of or the responsibility that comes with that sort of power. But I also think in a more like realistic, like for us as readers, I think you could read a message into it of, because he is literally speaking these things, that your words have power, that what you're saying, that you speaking sort of irresponsibly does have repercussions, and you should sort of, be measured in what you say and think about what you say and how it's going to affect other people and, that sort of thing. I think it'd be like a more meta narrative way to interpret that story potentially. Or that
yeah.
scene.
Also, like if you think about like creating art or stories, think about the consequences of what you're creating, how it could be interpreted, correctly or incorrectly, or how it could hurt people. And I think there was also a message in there about if you're going to help somebody, like do it for the right reasons, like do it for like if you like really want to help someone. Because there's another story that was cut where Bastian has a mule that he rides on named Yika, and she talks just like Artax does, and she's very cute. And Zaida convinces him to get rid of her because she's like, you're not worthy. That steed is not worthy to carry like a prince. She should.
That part made me so mad.
I know. So Bastian believes her immediately, and so he decides that he's going to write this little story for her that comes true for the mule. He says, "You're gonna go meet a beautiful unicorn, and you're gonna have tons of children, and you're gonna be so happy the rest of your life." And she wants to stay with Bastian because she loves Bastian, but she's like, okay, I'm really scared. I'm about to have this new crazy life, but okay. And she goes, and for all we know, she does have a new life. But then as soon as she leaves, Bastian's like depressed because he's like, I don't feel happy about this at all.
I think the book does mention, like, I think it does that thing where it's like, she married the unicorn and had 10 unicorn babies or whatever, but that's another story for another time.
For another time.
At least we know she ended up happy.
Yeah, the second half of the book does that, I think, like 5 times.
A little more than the first half did, I think.
And to go off that one more other thing, like you said, the sort of make sure you're helping people. So when going back to the clown, the clown
the
butterflies, does he ask them? Does Bastian ask them how he could help them or anything like that? Or does he just go, I'm going to fix this and turn them into clown butterflies? Do you remember?
The second thing. I don't think he asks
I think it's the second thing, yeah.
Because there's definitely, like kind of what you were saying, April, I definitely think there's a message there that is a very pertinent message still of not just thinking you can fix the problem for people and actually, even if you have the power to fix the problem, listening, getting input from the people who are experiencing a problem and seeing how they want to be, what you can do to help them as opposed to just like, I can fix this, boom.
Yeah, because they were not happy being clown butterflies either.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's definitely still a very timely message about, when people go into communities that are suffering or whatever and just go, we can fix this or whatever without actually asking the people in those communities, how do we help or whatever, what do you need, as opposed to just like going in and trying to fix things without, it's being an ally versus being like a savior type of thing. Yeah. So anyways.
There's another part that got cut that I was okay with where Bastian goes and talks with the monks of wisdom.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't even remember much about what was in there. I just felt like it dragged, and it just was like more of the same. And like, there's a consequence because like he goes there and does something, and then after he leaves, he loses some memories.
They ask him what Fantastica is when he's there, and he's like, "Well, it's the Neverending Story." And basically, he ends up causing like this rift between these monks, and they all like split off into different factions. Yeah. But, and correct me if you're remembering this differently, April, but I don't think that ever like comes back.
No, I don't recall
and has
that it does.
Yeah, because some of the other stuff that he does comes back and has like more of a long-reaching consequence. Mm-hmm. But this one just seemed like kind of random to me.
Yeah, it wasn't very consequential. I mean, it was cool that like the 3 monks was like a giant owl. What was it? A giant hawk?
It was like an owl and a fox. And
yeah, I kind of like that.
It's the same creatures from the beginning that are like the taxidermied animals in the school attic.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an owl, a fox, and something else.
I don't remember.
Maybe a hawk. But
it might have been.
Yeah, but I mean, it just kind of seemed like a side tracking thing that didn't really go anywhere. Wasn't necessary.
The movie was a little fuzzy on like Zaidi collecting his memories and stuff. Like we're a little fuzzy on the mechanics there. But I did like the idea of being able to look into his specific memories that he's using.
Yeah.
I thought that was great. I thought it was a really good way to visually represent the memories, because in the book it's just and then he forgot his memory of ever going to school or ever being you know, picked on and stuff like that. We actually get to see the memories in those little Minority Report balls, which is like that's exactly the same, which I loved. I thought it was neat. It's like a little like Rube Goldberg thing too, kind of. And it was
the little drops.
It was really more impactful that we got to see Bastian interact with his mother as well. There was a good emphasis on his relationship with his mother in this movie that wasn't really in the book. The book chose to make it about different things, and that's fine. But I liked that the movie kind of focused on that and was like, he's still really upset about this, and this is the major cause of the rift with his father, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, because his dad's dating again and all this stuff, and it's causing these issues because he's still very upset about his mom and stuff. Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea. It seems like I felt like they missed sticking the landing with having it at the end of the movie, with having it like come back again, and that like his memory of his mother or something being. I mean, I guess it's the memory of his father because he's lost the memory. I don't know. I felt like, because it is this recurring moment and they have that nice moment with her in the hospital and stuff. I felt like they needed one more moment of it at the end to help like tie up that storyline. But it is, I did like those scenes, and I like the little flashbacks that we get of his life. They're not flashbacks, they're his memories, but it's essentially like a flashback.
What is a memory but a flashback?
Yes, it's true.
I loved the small moments where Bastian uses a slang with Atreyu, the aforementioned "Give me 5" scene, or where Bastian says "Get real," and what does Atreyu say? He's like, "I am real."
I am real.
He's like, it's just a joke. Being real is a joke where you come from. It made me laugh.
Yeah, it's good. I love those moments. Yeah.
I really liked the cuts back to the real world with his dad, like reading the book and figuring it out.
So his dad doesn't read the book in the
no,
the book.
not at all.
Yeah.
I agree. I loved that. I thought it was a great ad, and it just added energy and kind of broke up the story a lot better.
Yeah, it was really helpful in like breaking up that story when we could like pop back and see his dad running around New York getting angry.
And it keeps a similar plot structure, a similar structure to the first movie, and gives you the same kind of vibe where we're going back and forth between Fantasia and the Earth or whatever, and watching somebody read the Neverending Story. And I like that.
Yeah, and that's kind of missing from the second half of the book. We're just in Fantasia. We don't have this two worlds thing that we had at the beginning of the book, which was nice.
And kind of coming off of that, I liked the idea of Bastian not needing to make wishes because his dad is like reading about what he's doing and like encouraging him. I thought that was really nice.
Yeah, I love that as well. It was like he was like Bastian in the first movie, you know. He's reading along and he's saying like, "No, you can do it," just like he was like cheering Atreyu on. It just made so much more sense conceptually that I kind of wish that that's what happened in the book instead of when he, as I mentioned, when he gets back to the real world, it's Coriander who has been to Fantasia. It would have made so much more sense if his dad either had been there or if he came out and realized that he was reading his story the whole time. It just gave them so much more of a connection, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And it also ties back even further to the first one because, and which we didn't really get much of that in the second movie, but in the first movie, in the opening scene, there's that moment where his dad tells him to like get his head out of the clouds and like, you know, you got to live in reality and that sort of stuff. And then so that character arc for his father of then finding this book and reading it and getting sucked into it the same way his kid did. Now they have this thing that connects them. It makes perfect sense. And that is one of the stronger moments in the movie. And it is surprising that the book didn't didn't think to do that.
Because in the movie they're also emphasizing how Bastian has to go back to his own world to get humans to believe in fantasies again or something. There's because they're forgetting about Fantasia, and that's what's creating the nothing or the emptiness, and it's like it's happening, in the movie. It should have been in the book, I think.
Another thing that I was okay with the movie cutting was Bastian goes to this village with people who sail wicker boats out into a sea of mist, and they like power their boats with thoughts.
Totally forgot that even happened until I read your note. Completely forgettable scene that should have been cut.
Yeah, it was just like one of those things that like didn't really come back in any way.
Well, it was just this weird like thing. Like Bastian has a wish that he wants to be part of a community, so that's how he ends up with these people. One note about Bastian's wishing is that in the book he can actively say, just like he does with like the worms and the butterflies, he can say, I wish you were like this, and I wish for this, and it can happen. But there's this like underlying thing about wishing that is explained to him by the lion in the desert, that the real wishing is what your heart truly desires, and it's not something that you can even necessarily be aware of. And that's a big theme in the book. And it's because you can say, I wish I was like this, or I wish I could go here. But it's what Oren really does is makes the things come true that you really want. And that was kind of
deepest,
and that's kind of why that happened. But then he went to this village with these people, and then eventually he was like, I don't want to be here because they don't have any individuality. So then he doesn't want to be there anymore, and so he leaves. And there's a lot of that.
Zaida's defeat in the movie, little silly. We talked about it. But in the book, she just gets trampled to death by her own suits of armor. And I thought it was a little anticlimactic.
That's definitely anticlimactic.
Maybe the point is that it's a little anticlimactic.
Fair.
Doesn't it also like
is Bastian and
doesn't it also kind of happen like off screen? Like it's not where Bastian is. It's just like he kind of hears that it happened.
Yeah, we just like pop back to her for a minute after he's gone on to do other things, and it's revealed that she loses the ability to command them for some reason, and they end up like trampling her to death.
Okay, but so it's not by like, but does her losing the ability to control them have anything to do with what Bastian's up to? I would imagine.
I mean, maybe because he's losing his memories, but no, we don't really know.
Yeah, we don't really know the answer to that question.
Okay. I think they had the movie had the right idea with him making a wish somehow that even the have a heart thing I think could have worked if they had somehow tied it to. The thing that would make sense to me is that last memory that he has, which is his father in the movie. If we had like a moment where we go into his memory, his last remaining memory, and it's a memory with his father, and his father tells him this thing at a very young age, he gives them this advice, no matter what, in the face of you're gonna run into bullies in your life, Bastian. You're gonna have moments where people want you to do bad things, but remember what's in here. And he like puts his hand on his heart or something. And that's the moment, and that's his one memory that he still has, and then he wishes for her to have a heart. Like, that at least ties those things together, like the have a heart line to his memory in a way that I feel like they were right on the precipice of something that could have worked.
Oh my God, that would have been so much better.
Right?
They were they were right there.
It's like right on the edge of a real storytelling moment, and they just didn't quite get there.
I also thought that the way Bastian gets back to the human world in the movie is less interesting, more easily understood than what happens in the book, so that's fine. But I think it is kind of less interesting. But they did bring back the high dive thing from the beginning, so it's a nice callback at least.
It was just like that movie Vanilla Sky. Have you guys seen that?
I have not actually seen Vanilla Sky.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't want to ruin the ending of Vanilla Sky, but it involves someone jumping off a high thing, and it's like, okay, like you're testing your Yeah. You know what? I can't even talk about it because I'm going to ruin the whole movie. So
only with a leap from the lion's head can end of Indiana Jones and the Temple of in the Last Crusade, the Temple of the Last Crusade. No, the Last Crusade, where he's got to take that leap of faith from the thing. Anyways, all right, we've got a handful of notes for the movie Nailed It.
As I expected, practically perfect in every way.
Or more accurately, things from the book that the movie actually used is a note that Katie put here, I guess.
I think that is more accurate this time around. There are four-faced people mentioned in the book.
We talked about this in the first episode about the guy. Yeah.
It's like one of the first few a group of people that joins his group. And looked pretty cool in the movie.
I thought it was a pretty effective gag the way they did it. I'm not exactly sure how they did it. Yeah, I don't know how they did it, but I was impressed with it. I was like, I don't know how they're pulling this off. I think I saw in a couple places there's a cut, like there's just a match cut from like it starts spinning, and then I think they swap him out for a different. With his face in a different place on the die or whatever.
You know what? Maybe he's just turning his head because there's a face on the side of his head, right?
Yeah.
And so they're just cutting around it to make it look like it's like spinning around.
I think that might be what's going on. I'm not sure because I thought there was another moment where it looked like you could see two faces moving, but I could be wrong. I don't know. It was impressive however they did it. It was cool.
Maybe they had some animatronics on one of the faces.
Very likely could have been.
As previously mentioned, the Acid Lake in the Silver City, and the city in the book is called Amarganth. And I believe Bastian gave the city. Bastian gives all of these places their names in the book.
They're more boring names.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad Silver City. That's what it is. So sure.
So. Amarganth is a very Tolkien style name. I feel like
Silver City is a little more
Midwest.
So it's a little more Oz.
Yeah, or Oz. Yeah,
and in the movie, it does have kind of a budget Emerald City
a little bit,
look to it.
And the people too, they're all.
I love the people that are straight up just carnival costumes or whatever. It's just
it is book accurate. So they did they're supposed to be bluish silver, and the look of the city. I know it was on a budget, but it pretty much looks like how it was supposed to look like. Zaida, her entire look and her motivation is just like it was in the book. As I mentioned, she wants Bastian to be empty so she can control him. We mentioned her in Guess Who, how she's described. In the book, she does have a cool pipe, though, but I bet they were no smoking.
Nope, no smoking in the kids' movie, that's for sure. Not in 1990.
Not even for a villain.
Nah.
Yeah, it's one of those long, Cruella de Vil cigarette holder things, and she says it has a little mouth, or is it a snake mouth that it looks like she's kissing it when she takes a puff.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And not to rain on your parade, Brian, but I was getting kind of a real drag queen vibe from Zaida. Just the outfit, it really looks like the dresses that RuPaul wears in the show. I don't know if you watch Drag Race, but I was just I could see that on the show tomorrow.
I thought her whole look was amazing. I like her and her throne room. I actually thought her throne room, I think I have a note about it in general notes, but we'll just talk about it now. I thought her throne room was really cool set design. It's super that gnarly throne is all these. It's I don't know if it's wood or what it's supposed to be, but it's this big mass of thorny I don't know, interwoven things, and it all looks super evil and cool and dark.
Yeah.
I like her whole aesthetic in the film. I thought was super cool.
Falkor does refuse to carry Zaida in the book.
Oh yeah, he's I won't carry
I'm
that
not.
woman.
Nope, not carrying her.
He does end up carrying her though in the book. He refuses. At first, but then he has to because Bastian makes him, and he's really unhappy about it.
I thought they went in her carriage thing right away, but maybe I'm misremembering that.
I could also be misremembering. Don't quote me. It's very possible. We mentioned the carriage itself, just the look of it, it's a big kind of flower blossom, and it's ruby red, and it looked just exactly how I imagined it.
In the book, is it filled with desk toys? Did you notice in the movie
there might be trinkets in there?
She has like 3 of those little things you would see at like a Spencer's Gifts. I don't know if you have Spencer's Gifts in Canada, but like just any of those stores that sells like knickknacks and little stuff. She has like a Newton's cradle. She literally has a Newton's cradle, the little balls on the string or whatever that hit each other.
Like the line of balls.
Yeah. She has one of those. It's sitting in the foreground, and then she has one of those other magnetic things that's just like there's 2 of those other things that like businessmen in the 80s had on their desks. Like she just has 3 of those in the carriage, and I was like, they just went to a cheap gift store and bought.
They were like, oh, we need some stuff to put in here, so they went out. They went to the executive producer's office and just like
raided his desk. Exactly.
That's great art direction right there.
Yeah.
Zaida does try to convince Bastian that Atreyu is jealous of him and that he wants Arin. We talked about the belt that turns him invisible. They do go in circles while trying to get to the ivory tower in the book. It's because of a different reason. It's because Bastian like kind of doesn't like know what he wants. So they're not like
they're originally going not to the ivory tower. They're going to find a way home for him, but they don't know how, but they're just going to do that. And he doesn't really want to go home. So that's why they go in circles.
They end up going but there's a similar kind of scene where they're like, we've been here before. We're just going in circles.
Yeah. I think the movies one does work where she's like the slight change of her like leading them in circles, and that causing distrust between Atreyu, because Atreyu's like, dude, she's like lying to us and leading us in circles, and Bastian's like, nah, she's good. Like I think that moment does work in the film, that little change.
Yeah, and I mean this kind of goes with the next note I have here about the paranoia that Bastian has about Atreyu, but there's that whole it's a lot of like in the book where like Bastian is just kind of like testing Atreyu and just being like, I'm gonna do whatever I want, and if you don't like it, then you're my enemy. Like when they first go to the hand castle, Atreyu's like, we got to turn around and leave. Like this is dangerous. And then he's like, and Bastian's like, nope, we're going there. And Atreyu's like, why? And Bastian's like, because I feel like it. And you're like, whoa. Yeah. And it's the same thing where Atreyu is warning him about Zaida. Can't trust her, and Bastian's like, well, I feel like I can, and if you're questioning me, then fuck you. Basically. He's not really a fun guy to be around at that point in the book. And the whole spying on him with the invisibility belt, that's right out of the book too.
I always hated that scene when I watched this kid as a movie, when I watched this movie as a kid, I always hated that scene because I was like, dude, you just missed like the only you heard the wrong part of the conversation. Like as a kid, I didn't understand like dramatic irony, so I was just like, I hate this.
You just walked in at the wrong point. That is what happens in the book, though. So it's accurate.
And Bastian does have that restored relationship with his father at the end, in both the book and the movie. A little different, but the relationship does get restored.
Did you guys feel like you wanted maybe one more scene at the end, like with his dad, because it just ends at them hugging and then it pans over the Neverending Story? Maybe it wouldn't have been as climactic, but maybe just some kind of little conversation or something. I was just like, oh, it's all right. It's okay.
Yeah, I think there could have been one more moment. I'm not sure what, but I do think there one more moment would have been, and because what would have been good because it ties back in to, here you go, I got it, guys, don't worry. So here's the rewrite. The last they hug, come in the rain, they hug, boom. Camera pans over to the Neverending Story, close up on it. Arin reappears on it. Camera pulls out. We're now at his mom's grave. They've left the Neverending Story on her grave. Pulls back to the two of them standing there. They don't need the Neverending Story anymore because they have each other. They've closed this chapter in their life. Literally closed this chapter in their life. Camera pulls back. They hug and embrace. They're now able to move past her not move past, but like they're able to sort of bond over this and move past it together, move forward, and they leave the Neverending Story there because they don't need it anymore. And then post-credit scene, random kid walks up and picks the Neverending, grave robs the mom, and yeah.
Or he's getting chased by bullies too, or something.
Yeah. He gets chased by bullies, gets chased into the graveyard, hides behind the gravestone, and it's like, what's this? Boom.
Yeah, and then get the song in there. Never-ending story.
It's perfect. All right, we've got a few odds and ends before we get to the final verdict.
I just want to say that Bastian's dad, straight up hot.
He wasn't played by Major Dad this time. Apparently, he's. What did you say? The Flash's dad.
He was the Flash in the 80s or 90s, like the short-lived TV show of the Flash. He was Barry Gordon in that one.
Yeah, I looked it up. He did a bunch of like soap operas and stuff. Like I can see it. He's good looking.
He's a handsome man.
Hot dad.
He's a hot dad.
Still drinking orange juice. Did you see that?
Oh, was he?
I didn't see any eggs though.
No eggs though. Yeah.
I don't remember what Bastian called like the woman that he was dating, like minivan woman, or something like that.
Not a minivan. It's a station wagon.
Station wagon, station wagon woman. Can't blame her.
Yeah,
he's a hot dad.
Yeah, good for her.
I have a note here. I enjoyed when they showed the memory of Bastian in bed being read like a story from his mom, and then match cut to his mom in the hospital bed, and Bastian's like kissing her on the forehead, and then and I was just like, I'm tearing up, and then the bird's crying. I'm doing what the bird's doing, you know. It's just like a really, really powerful moment.
It is a really sweet scene.
Yeah, it was just really, really well done. And then his mom was saying like, we're all a part of the Neverending Story. And I mean, she didn't mean literally like the book, The Neverending Story. And then Bastian's like, even if you die, and then it's just like, oh, and then the bird's like, that's good to know. It was really, really well done.
It is a good scene. I agree. That scene always stuck with me as a kid. It was very sad. But also very melancholy, I guess.
Yeah, it's sad, but it's also like, you know, almost comforting kind of.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that it seems that the bookstore now is in the Flatiron building. I don't know if they filmed this in New York, but am I crazy that that's the Flatiron in New York, that building that the bookstore is in? I think there are several buildings like that in other places.
There's a building like that in Toronto.
Oh, is there?
And there was it's like this weird
Did they film this one in Toronto?
It's possible. It's this weird thin building that's like in the middle of like a busy street. And it was also, it was called like the Flatiron Pub.
Yeah,
so I don't know if it's the same one. Or...
I don't know because I don't know if that's like that design, or I don't know the history of this. But there's a famous building in New York City called the Flatiron that looks just like that. And I did notice that there was some other ones in other places, but I don't know if the name is based on the original one or if it's like the style, or I don't know what it is. But I think that was the one in New York, or at least it looked like it to me from the pictures I saw. But because it's weird that. I guess it's a magic bookstore, so it can just teleport around, because that's nowhere near where it was in the first one.
And it's definitely not there the next day when the dad goes to find it.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about Nimbly's like his costume and the prosthetics. I wanted to specifically call out the legs and the feet.
Yeah.
Looked really good, I thought. Because I feel like it's probably not easy to mimic that bird leg structure.
The backward hinged.
Yeah.
Yeah, they bend the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like where are the humans? Where are the humans' feet in that costume?
There were some times where, specifically in that one shot in the desert where Bastian's like doesn't remember anything, he's dying, where I could kind of tell that the bird had the legs were in front of him, and the actors, he was like kneeling and his legs were hidden underneath like the tail feathers, basically.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I don't know that doesn't work for all the scenes necessarily, but that one particular moment, I'm pretty sure he was like on his knees and the feathers were like hiding the actor's legs.
Or maybe the person can tuck their legs into the costume when it's like flying away or something like that.
Yeah, I assume when it's flying that, they like tuck up into the costume somehow. Because, you don't see their legs when it's like pulled up on the wires or whatever. But I assume they can hide them some other way. But when he's on the ground, I think he's just like hiding them under the feathers. Huh. But it's a very effective. It works really well.
Yeah.
Once again, did not look up who did the costumes or the prosthetics in this movie, but they were good. They were good.
It said it at the right end of the movie, and now I forgot what it was. It did say effects by, and then I forgot. I'll look it up real quick while you go ahead, April, on your next point. I'll Google.
So there was just a quote that I liked from the book that was towards the end, where I think it was Dame Iola, the plant lady, that said this. That up until then, he always wanted to be someone other than he was, but he didn't want to change. And I thought that was just an interesting message about fantasy and self-improvement, that Bastian has to go through a big, long journey to understand by the end, because like he can just get whatever he wants I want to be this, I want to be this, but he didn't ever want to change who he really was. And I think that's a good message that, we can all think of. It's just like, I wish I was this. I wish I had this. I wish I, had more money, or I lived here, or I had this, or I had that. But it takes a lot of work to actually change yourself and your habits and your relationships. And I think that was, there's a lot of messages in this book, but I think that was the overlying one.
Right. And we see in the book too, that when Bastian takes that shortcut and just wishes to be someone else instead of doing the work, that he ends up like a terrible person and ultimately unhappy, and to the point where he just and empty. I mean, he doesn't know what he wants anymore,
Yeah. I was unsuccessful at finding the company. Because on IMDb, they don't have, like, when you go to, like, special effects credits, it just has, like, the individual people. It doesn't have, like, the company
studio.
or
It's not
studio.
like, ILM or whatever.
Yeah, they don't have that. So, and I couldn't find anything on Wikipedia, so it doesn't matter. But, it says it at the end of the credits in the movie. I know, I saw it, and it was, like, a specific name, and I was like, and then I forgot it. So, there's one line I wanted to talk about that I thought was super funny, is there's a moment where Bastian makes a wish, and the crystal ball, rolls down the thing and gets falls into the thing, and Zaida takes it and walks away. The camera pulls back, revealing Nimbly like lurking in the shadows, and he turns like to the camera and says, "That's a memory Bastian has lost." And it's like, wow, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you, movie. Really
Is that like
laying it out there.
a studio note? Like, they're not going to know what's going on. It's like, we were already explained how this thing works.
In great detail, they explained, like, okay, his memory, he makes a wish, and then it pulls it from his brain, and it turns into a memory and gets sucked out of him. And then it's like, nope, we got to tell him again directly to camera right after it happens. Okay, thank you.
I also love that this movie straight up plagiarized A New Hope.
Yeah.
Help me, Bastian. You're my only hope.
Yeah. Almost
Totally.
like word for word, nearly, when she comes in. And she's like a hologram, basically. Like, it's all right. They're like, why reinvent the wheel?
I did want to say, like, even though we already talked about how Childlike Empress is not in the book, I think she's in the movie probably solely because they were like, this is a Neverending Story sequel. People know that character. You have to put her in. It's that sequelitis thing. Like, people are going to watch this movie and be like, well, where's this main character? Even though it didn't really make sense really for her to be in the movie. I think that's a big reason why she was in the movie. And she's also barely in the movie. Same with the first one, though. She comes in at the beginning and the end, and that's kind of it.
Even though she's a main character, she's not in much of either of the films.
It's true.
Yeah.
What a choice role.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the book, Bastian is kind of like Jesus. Like, he created and saved. He simultaneously created and saved the world. He saved the world from the nothing, and the people all know it. And they're like worshiping him and following him, and there's a religious message in here somewhere. I'm not quite sure exactly what it is, but at least there's the corruption of power in there about how he has so much power. Of course, he becomes corrupted, but it would almost be like if like we were alive when Jesus came, but Jesus also like saved Earth from like climate change or something. Like imagine that. Like it's like that.
Yeah.
You know? How would you react to this person?
It's kind of an interesting, like almost reimagining of the like New Testament story of like, what if Jesus really bought into the idea that he was a god and was just like, yes, I am
really
your
more
god.
like he's God, not Jesus, because Jesus, but he could perform miracles, so you know, kind of the same thing, you know.
It's definitely pulling some sort of is pretty common in stories to pull that that allegorical framework for sure. The last note I had was that so we mentioned in the prequel episode that they said apparently the first movie didn't use much in the way of matte paintings, that it was mostly some. I still find that hard to believe. It looked like matte paintings.
There were at
me,
least a few, but yeah.
This movie also uses a bunch of matte paintings, and there's a couple in particular. There's one moment, and I think it's around the time where they're sitting around the fire, and Atreyu or Bastion comes to spy on Atreyu and Falcor, and we see that huge wide shot of like the I always forget what it's called.
The Ivory Tower?
Ivory Tower.
Yeah.
Keep wanting to call it the Crystal City for some reason. The Silver City and the Ivory Tower. The Ivory Tower is there in the distance, and like the river running around it. It's super gorgeous. And and there's also some really cool moments where that felt even more like alien than some of the stuff in the first movie, where Atreyu is like riding the horse. I think it might be Bastion on it, but I think it's Atreyu is riding Artax through this world, and there's like these giant cool crystals like sticking out of like almost look like these giant crystals sticking out of the ground and stuff. And it just was like we had a few moments like that almost some of that stuff felt even more like, because specifically there's a few scenes in the first movie where Atreyu is riding Artax, and it like looks like he's just riding through like Montana or something. You know what I mean? Like it's just like clearly like a helicopter shot of him riding through a field or something like that. And I mean, it looks beautiful still, but it's not like fantastic or whatever. It's just like horse riding through a field. But this one we get some really cool, and there are other moments too, but this one we get some really cool like I said, matte paintings and these vistas that are super alien and neat, I thought. So I again enjoyed the art direction and the set design in this one.
So the memory with his dying mom is sad.
Yes.
But it kind of made me laugh because we got the title drop.
It is.
Title drops always make me laugh.
They will always make me chuckle, even when they work. Like it works in this moment. Yeah, but it still does make me kind of chuckle because it's like name of the movie.
Yeah, you do the like meme where you point at the TV. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That's the title of the movie.
Yeah.
We had coriander with a K in this.
Was it in the book?
Yep. So on the bookstore door, it's a K. So they changed it.
Interesting.
See, I thought, because I couldn't remember, because we see it in his dad looks at the like seal on the inside of the book,
and
I thought
with like his address.
Yeah, with his address. I thought it might have been on that one.
It probably was, but I just noticed it on the door. Yeah, or the window. Okay. Yeah. Which is great. One small note, again, going back to the whole Zaida exploding at the end. It was kind of like a half-assed message about love in there, because the Empress is like, she was the emptiness and it had to be filled with love. But then why did she explode when he was just her heart? So I thought it would have been cool if she turned into the plant lady that we were talking about, or Dame Iola, or something. Because that would have been totally different, like design-wise. And maybe they could have had some kind of conversation. Then it just would have made more sense.
Well, I think even it would have made more sense if, like, instead of exploding, if she had like immediately realized the error of her ways because she has a heart now.
Yeah, she
like
has a
like
heart
the
now.
Grinch.
Yeah, like the Grinch.
Right?
Yeah,
It
it's heart
seems like,
for
oh my
three
gosh,
sizes,
I'm so sorry. I'll free the childlike empress right away.
Yeah.
It seems like she did in that moment where she cries.
Yeah,
but
because she
then
cries.
just
Yeah.
explodes.
She just explodes.
Yeah.
Remorse, you feel remorse, you're dead. It's like what is the messaging here on like retributive justice?
Her heart grew 3 sizes and she went into cardiac arrest.
Yeah.
And last note, I don't like the new theme song. It played at the end credits and sucked. It was like a cover of the original song, but then it turns into a much worse song. I think it was called like Dreams for Dreams or something like that.
Yeah.
It was like a medley, and I was just like, this sucks.
No, it is
music
definitely
so much better in the first movie.
Yes, it is nothing compared to the first movie's soundtrack. That's for sure.
They got back the same composer though. Giorgio Moroder did that new song, but also just the score and stuff was just weaker.
It wasn't as good. No, there are still some moments. Like we still get the main theme a few times. I feel like, or at least it seemed like it. But it's definitely a little different. And it didn't hit the same way that it did in the first one.
Yeah, it was like a new arrangement, and it wasn't the same person singing it. So
yeah. All right, it's almost time for the final verdict. But first, April, one more time, go ahead and plug your pluggables.
My podcast is called No Such Thing as a Bad Movie, found where podcasts can be found. You can find us on Twitter at No Such Thing Pod, and if you want to support us on Patreon, patreon.com/No Such Thing as a Bad Movie. If you sign up on the $5 level, you get a little bonus episode every 2 weeks, so you can basically get content every week. And my Twitter and Instagram is at April Etmanski.
Nice. Are you the only one of those in the world?
The only April Etmanski?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think.
You just lucked out on
that. I think that there's other. I might be the only April Etmanski, but there's other Etmanskis out there that are not related to me. That is odd.
I was just wondering if I had met another soul name bearer, because I'm one of the only people. I'm the only person in the world named Brian Sholigo, and so I wondered. It's always interesting to me if I find somebody else who has the same, who's in the same situation of being the only person with that name.
Does not describe me.
No, you're a lot of Katie Schwartzes.
I at one point was part of a Facebook group that was comprised solely of people named Katie Schwartz. It was kind of amazing.
So yeah, you're like the opposite of me.
Did you like compare your experiences in your lives to see what else was similar?
Mostly we were just like, hi, Katie. Hi, other Katie. This was like 2010.
Yeah. This is back when Facebook groups were like a thing that people did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also for us, you can do us a giant favor. You head over to patreon.com/thisfilmislit. You support us for $2, $5, or $15 a month. And you can get access to our bonus content, which we have another episode of that coming out soon, where we're reviewing patron requested like non-film or non-book adaptations. And you get access to those at the $5 level, and at the $15 level, you get priority recommendation status, which means you get to pick what stuff we do sooner. You can recommend stuff without supporting us, but we just might not ever get to it. So we'll see. We have a very long list. And also you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Goodreads, all those places. Just search for This Film Is Lit. All right, it's time for the final verdict.
Now, are you ready for your sentence?
Sentence? But there must be a verdict first.
Sentence first, verdict afterward.
Okay, so while there was a lot that I did not particularly enjoy about the second half of this book, the meandering plotline, Bastian's whininess, etc., I can't deny that it ended up in a place that I thought was really interesting and meaningful. I thought that the message of losing your true self through wishing to be someone completely different was interesting, as well as a really good message for kids. I think that I would have liked this movie as a kid, but it's just so completely different from the book. To be honest, I think it probably could have stood on its own as a fantasy adventure kids film during that time period, although I totally get keeping it attached to an already successful property. I'll also say that as an adult, some of the film's issues definitely stood out to me like sore thumbs, especially like the incoherence of the story at times and the fact that I can tell where they cut corners with like the effects and set pieces and costumes. And there was also Zaida acting entirely through her eyes and eyebrows.
No, that was not a negative. How dare you? How dare
Eyebrow
you?
acting?
It kind of drove me nuts. In trying to hold these two pieces of media up one to one, I think they would probably come out maybe a little closer to even for me than I would have thought initially. There were things that I liked and disliked about both the book and the movie. However, the fact that the book draws itself to a close with such a good message and has such creative elements takes it over the edge for me. So for those reasons, I'm going to give this one to the book.
All right, April.
Well, I thought the movie was going to be flat out bad. And it really wasn't. It had some good production design, and all the main actors were quite good, I think. As Katie said, I think it's a good like kids movie.
Yeah.
And I could see a lot of value in it as a younger person watching it. The book is basically like Lord of the Rings, the second half anyway. It's a long journey where we meet new people and go to a new place every chapter, and the movie just can't do that, and that's okay. I think it was a valiant effort, but I had to give it to the book. I loved the large cast of characters and the whole journey Bastian went on to ultimately become a better person who can reach out to his father. And the book had just some big themes about not living in a fantasy, but sharing your dreams with the people you love. And I just thought it was a great fantasy book overall that I think adults and children can appreciate. So I would go for the book, and I would recommend the book to most people.
Fantastic. We have reached the end of our spring series, our spring mini series. That's so what was the final score here? We had the first episode, we had April chose the movie and you chose the book, Katie. And then this time you both chose the book. So ultimately we came down 3-1 for the book, roughly, but
technically.
But they both have their the first movie definitely is a slightly more coherent movie overall, I would say, than the second movie. But the second movie also has some fun stuff in it that is very good.
Yeah, and I think too, like April said, I would definitely recommend this book to people. And I think if you like, especially the first movie, and you've never read the book, give it a shot.
Yeah,
absolutely. And what kind of came through with the prequel episode with the feedback with the community was apparently this book was like a big deal for a lot of people, younger people growing up, maybe people in different countries. I'm not sure, but I had never. I didn't even know it was based on a book. I read it when I was in college because my cousin read it because we were both huge fans of the movie growing up. And she was like, I picked it up and she was telling me all about it and, telling me about Fantasia. And I was like, okay, I got to read this book. But it was never around when I was a kid that I knew of.
Yeah, I was completely unaware. And it was surprising to me, like you said, in the prequel to see how many people had read the book, it seemed like, and had very, strong feelings. Nostalgia for the book. Because I definitely would have, we talked about, we would have expected it to go much more in the favor of the movie, of like everybody have seen the movie and maybe very few people have actually read the book, and it didn't seem to be the case. It seemed like quite a few people had that attachment to the book, which was cool and surprising but neat. All right, Katie, before we wrap up, what's next?
Up next we have a patron request, getting back on that train to tackle some of those, and we will be doing Stir of Echoes, novel by Richard Matheson, and it is a 1999 film.
What do we know what it is? Like,
I think
genre?
it's like a supernatural horror
it's
kind
a
of
thriller, a horror. That's the one starring Kevin Bacon, right?
I think
I have
so.
No idea. I don't know anything.
I've seen the movie many times. If it is in fact that movie you're talking about,
it probably is. I can't imagine it's a very distinct title for sure. Stir of Echoes.
And I just got the book in the mail, and it is not a super long book, which pleases me.
Yeah, it is Kevin Bacon. I did look it up. Yeah, Kevin Bacon. It's got a 70% on Rotten Tomatoes, so
I think it's a great movie, but that's another one. I think I saw it when it came out in 99, so it's been a while.
After being hypnotized by his sister-in-law, a man begins seeing haunting visions of a girl's ghost, and a mystery begins to unfold around him, is the IMDb synopsis for the film. There you go. So, interesting. All right. So that's next 2 weeks from now for that, and then we'll be back with a prequel episode in 1 week where we'll have our fan follow-up reaction for the Neverending Story Part 2, the next chapter. Once again, April, thank you for coming on and joining us on this never-ending story journey. Whatever.
Thanks for having me. It was a great time.
Yes, a lot of fun, and we appreciate you. So that's going to do it. Until next time, guys, gals, non-binary, everybody else.
Keep reading books.
Keep watching movies.
And keep being awesome.
Yes. Both times you nailed it.
Did it sound like it was at the same time? I know there's a delay.
I'll move it. I'll fix it in the edit.
Fix it in post.
Yeah, I'll fix it in post.